learn with me what the hell is going on. Someone needs to get this message to the defense. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Have to use brain power. Let me help out Dr. Russell here.
Many people suffer from what's called an acute grief reaction.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
The investigation was done with honor, integrity, and all the evidence pointed in one direction only.
Buchanan was so defensive and unable to throw Proctor under the bus because he loved him.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Then we add what we know about Michael Proctor. This guy is just the world's biggest. On every level that a person could be, between incompetence and stupidity, Michael Proctor wins the award for a combination of both. They killed him. Who are all the powers that be? Look at the smile on his face. That's what happened. That's what happened. So she doesn't actually want them to get here quickly, and that's the reason why she doesn't say there's an officer down. Meet the Bar Association of Norfolk County's Person of the Year.
I routinely do when I work with attorneys, okay? I prepare this on my own.
Oh my God. See? You did? It is undeniable.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Holy you guys. Build some way to feed her ego. So if you have absolutely nothing to do with the death of John O'Keefe, why start crying on the stand? Hank Brennan deserves an award for being the most unlikable human being that the world has ever seen. Consciousness of guilt. I would really like somebody to do the right thing in this case.
Sergeant Barrows, is this the condition of the right rear taillight?
Absolutely not.
At no point do you wake up or go outside and say to somebody, why are you here? What if there was a gunman? Because you don't know. How do I know? There's 40 cops in front of my very small front yard. That's the bedroom window. Here's Sonny. Say hi, everybody. Here's my son. Hello. Sonny barks if you walk by my window and sneeze.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I wasn't going to record a video today, but then I stumbled upon this. Peter met with Adam Lally for lunch. During this lunch, Adam Lally told Peter that he knows the poor person. Oh my God. This is not good.
Now you're starting to see the blurs easier.
You see those two blurs?
Are moving around.
She absolutely knows it would not be Karen Reed's defense team that she'd have to worry about. It would be the defense who she lied to.
Yes, the defendant not guilty or guilty?
A juror explaining why she voted to acquit Karen Reed of that second-degree murder charge for allegedly ramming her SUV into John O'Keefe during a blizzard in 2022.
A collision did not occur. I can't assess the motive to this sloppy police investigation.
And the toughest moment for her? Hearing the derogatory text messages about Reed sent by lead homicide investigator Michael Proctor just hours after he got the case.
Whatever timestamp was on that deleted wall file is the time that she did that search. And she deleted it. Let's make sure and pin it on this girl who I hope kills herself. That's a class act. You are a class act, Michael Proctor. Definitely someone should give you a gun and a badge. 100% sure that Karen did not do this.
Number one is I could not be standing here without these amazing supporters who have supported me and my team financially and, more importantly, emotionally for almost 4 years. And the second thing I want to say is no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have.
How dare they?
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Benigno. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a sixth-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor. And today we will be talking John O'Keefe, Karen Reed, the standard operating protocol, because clearly the Commonwealth just can't let it go. Mind boggling. And obviously, and I see in some of the comments in the chat, hi, everybody in the chat. It's so nice to see all of you. I see chatter about the Kelsey Fitzsimmons situation. I don't even know what to call it, case, disaster. And I definitely, of course, have my eye on it. I think I'm still in my assessment phase. I'm starting to get the hang of this and get my groove in terms of like the process, right? So if I'm going to take on a case, I got to I got to do like the preliminary assessment and evaluation and then decide like how deep do I want to get into this? And once I decide, okay, I'm going to go all in, then it's like, the deep dive. One of the things that's challenging, at least so far from what I've seen with the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case, is that it's still very much, it seems like in an earlier stage, or at least I'm not able to find a lot of content of her specifically. Melanie Little has done an amazing job, though, of covering this case. It seems like from the very, very beginning, as I remember seeing Melanie talk about this like months and months and months and months ago. So I definitely probably got to go back through her playlist and start at the beginning if I'm going to cover it. So I totally, totally get it. But I have my eye on it all the way. It's really interesting. At one point I thought, all right, maybe it's better to have very little information going in. Maybe the better thing if you're going to do an analysis is to like stay highbrow and just do the behavioral stuff. But then I learned from a video where I tried to do that, or where I did do that, I realized you don't have any context. So all you have is, what you know about the signs of stress. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Because when you're doing any kind of just basic body language analysis, it's about stress responses. And so at the end of the day, right, if I'm going to be able to do this effectively, you really have to either have a tremendous amount of information about somebody, a lot of personal behavior or personal words of theirs, right? Like you need something to wrap your head around to get into the mind of the person that we're talking about. And that's why it's so important. and I'm realizing it, right? Like this is all new to me. So I'm, in terms of like the formality of it, right? In terms of applying all these skills to kind of like the forensic world, it's like, okay, I'm getting a groove, I'm getting my process, but it's a lot of work, you guys. Wow, it's crazy. And then things come up, right? Things come up like this Charlie Kirk thing. Somebody, and you guys are amazing. And I have to say, all the comments and the emails, I appreciate it because I really, really appreciate it. Even if people are disagreeing or saying something critical, because that's how I learn, And so it's like, for me, it really is like life is just this silly lesson that we're always kind of growing from, and a very serious lesson, a very challenging lesson. But I feel like it's just kind of always evolving learning. And so that's how I learn, is just from engaging with all of you. And so when you guys send me stuff to look at, I love it. I deep dive in, but then I get distracted and I end up on these whole other roads looking at completely separate stuff. My sister brought up Casey Anthony the other night. So I didn't really, honestly, I had only ever remembered like garbage media coverage, right? So I didn't know anything about it at all. And so I had to just check that out, and it's just endless, you guys. It's endless. So, yeah. So, I've got my eye on the Kelsey stuff. Obviously tracking all of this with Karen Reed, the fact that they are trying to kind of bring her into the Turtle Boy fold with the witness intimidation, which we're going to take a little look at tonight. Of course, more. And then I know on the 22nd, Karen Reed is being involved in the civil case, or brought in on the civil case. So, and I did, Sherry, I see Sherry D. Hi, Sherry D. I did see the I did see I guess, what is that, an affidavit or statement? I did see some of that stuff. So, and again, it's really, really interesting because, like I said, when I get into these cases, it's like there's levels to this stuff. There's just levels. It's amazing to me. And little things, you guys, like I got a bigger computer screen, and can I tell you how much of a difference this makes? It is phenomenal, the difference, what I can see with a bigger screen in terms of analyzing people's body language. So it's just incredible, these little things. Um, and yeah, so there's a lot going on, and I've got my eyes on all of it, trying to figure out, all right, where do we want to go? And then, of course, the Adelson stuff. And I saw that Donna Adelson, is appealing, and the whole thing about the jurors. Of course, she is. That's no surprise. And then there's all the controversy about Wendy and whether she'll ever be indicted. I actually had a really interesting conversation with a criminal attorney, a defense attorney today, to ask more about, because I'd be the first to tell you, I am illiterate when it comes to the law, except for what we all know from just being so, focused on true crime. And so I wanted to know, what does immunity mean? What are the details? Is she covered under immunity? Is she not covered? Blah, 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 blah. So there, I'm just in it. I'm in it, just trying to get as much information as I can to be as informed as possible. Right. And that's what you got to do. It's a lot. And then, as I said, somebody asked me to analyze the Charlie Kirk, I guess, assassin, for lack of a better way, Tyler Robinson's text thread, text messages. And so that was just a whole nother thing. And so I spent a lot of time looking at those. And that is just like a whole nother thing, like I said. So, so just been in it, and there's a lot going on. So I thought, all right, what am I going to talk about tonight? What do we need to talk about tonight? And then it kind of hit me like, yeah, we can go in all these directions. I was going to put a poll up and say, what do you guys think? Right? Yeah. Like, I was thinking, should we talk about the jury misconduct in the Adelson case? Should we talk about Wendy? Should we talk about, Kelsey? What should we get our head around? And at the end of the day, I realized, while we know that Karen Reed has this civil thing coming up on the 22nd, and I will show you clips from what I saw that changed my mind, because that was the direction I was going. Heading into yesterday, I was like, all right, I'm going to put up a poll, and I'm going to ask everybody to tell me what they want to talk about. And then I saw this, which I will show you clips of, and my head flew off again. So I was like, nope, we're talking about Karen Reed, because this, somebody's got to be talking about it. We cannot let it go. It has to be out there. It has to be out there. So I'm going to show you a clip of what I saw. And again, it's just, I can't, when you see this, like, just unimaginable injustice, it just makes everything inside of you just freak out. And you see, we have Essex County, which of course is just north of Norfolk County. You have to believe that the kind of behaviors that we're seeing in Norfolk County probably bleed over right into these other counties. And now with this Kelsey Fitzsimmons case, what I can see is that now we are dealing with a police officer. She's a police officer. Her partner, boyfriend, husband, baby daddy is a firefighter, right? And a paramedic, I think. I guess that's one and the same. So we're dealing, and then you have, of course, the exact same situation where the DA's office, homicide division, are the ones that are investigating the crime. And I have to tell you, as I think about that setup, does that strike anyone else as just like something about that really doesn't sit well with me? And I don't know why. Why does that just not sit well? Why is the fact that the very people who are prosecuting you have their own homicide team who are working tandem with them to try to prosecute you? Like, there's absolutely no objectivity, right? I mean, does anybody else see that? And I guess this is just the system, obviously. But somehow in seeing how it's played out with the Karen Reed saga, and then now I'm starting to ask these same questions with this Kelsey Fitzsimmons stuff because, yeah, the judge seems like they're controlling and whacked. I see somebody saying whacked. That's right. The judge is whacked, right? So it's like, what is going on? What is going on? Yeah. So, I think this whole system, it just feels so broken and it feels so obvious. And I don't know, it's like just super overwhelming. So we definitely have work to do. And yes, so the Bettero letters, I know that the new Bettero letters were coming. They didn't get dropped yet, right? I know he has a motion or that's supposed to be coming like in the next few days. I see Bettero. I see his name in the chat. So I don't think so. Oh my God, that would be crazy if I'd missed that. But I know that that's coming too, right? Of course, in Aidan Carney's case, the mega motion is out. Oh, wow. Okay. So I didn't see that. I don't know how I missed the mega motion. When did that come out? Was that like today? Hopefully that was today. So that is definitely something that I'm going to be very focused on because, as I said, this is this case, the fact that they are trying to once again go to another grand jury with Karen Reed's cell phones and bring her into this case. It is where do they think that, like, where are they getting right? Are you serious? You have the taxpayers in the state of Massachusetts. As it was, Morrissey had to go to Congress, to go to, right, in Massachusetts and say, hey, guys, I need more money to persecute an innocent woman. That's how he got the $1.4 million for the second trial or whatever it is. And by the way, that number's going up. It's still going up, right? Because there's all these other expenses that we don't know about yet or that haven't come out yet. And if you look at what the grand total for Aperture was, $700,000, that's like we're almost, more than halfway there. So when I see that, right, they are going to continue to come after her. And as I said, I was sitting there, recently, as soon as I saw, I think Denise, our amazing mod, Denise, I think she had sent me something and it said, I forget exactly what the deal with the message that you sent me was, Denise, but at the end of the day, I'm sitting there and it says, like, did you see that they are looking to go after Karen Reed again? And I thought it was a joke, honestly. I really thought, I was like, something like that. But of course, no, very serious, dead serious. They're going to give her a car back. But yeah, we're going to go to another grand jury, even though the first one didn't think there was any kind of crime here. Now we're going to go against you again. We see Cosgrove hell-bent on it. And here's the thing. And this is the reason why I wanted to talk about this tonight. When you ground this in thinking about who the witnesses are that we're talking about, okay? Think about what we're talking about. We are talking about the McAlberts. Those are the witnesses that we are protecting, right? Yuri Buchanan, Michael Proctor. Now, I know thankfully, they are no longer a part of this case because they are police officers, or were anyway. But you got to think about who we're talking about here. This whole case is Cosgrove trying to defend Brian Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Matt McCabe, Chris Albert, Colin Albert, right? And even though on one hand, it really seems like these guys, like Cosgrove, like it seems like they're using the O'Keefe family with this is what the family wants. They're using that as the way that they can rationalize spending all this money and being so aggressive in their persecution of Karen Reed. But the reality is there's only one reason why they won't let her go. And that is very obviously, and you can't get away from this. I mean, this is what this case is really all about. Like the utter morons that these cops were in the Karen Reed trial, these guys planted evidence, right? They planted evidence. They had no idea that we were going to all be watching so carefully and so closely. They thought like business as usual, like I am sure they have in dozens and dozens of other cases, right? Some of which we are very, very, very familiar with. And there's no way that they can let her go, because if they ever let Karen Reed go, if they allow themselves to say, we should cut our losses and run, what they are also then doing is saying, well, our guys are guilty. And it's their office, it's their homicide detectives that planted evidence. And as I will show you tonight, I have questions about whether or not it wasn't Morrissey himself that directed them to do it. Right? So, and that's the thing. And exactly right, Sherry. It's like, at a certain point, it's just so unbelievable. It's unbelievable, but it has to stop. I mean, there's two threads here, right? We all have an investment in this kind of power being checked, because it's just insane, right? Insane. And the fact that you see what's happening, right? They are going after the person who is exposing their corruption. That's what this case is. Like, make no mistake, that's what this case is. That is what the quote witness intimidation case is. It is the Commonwealth going after somebody for trying to expose them. And here's the thing, you guys, like this really happened. These guys, this isn't even, there's been times where, you have like conjecture, right? Theories about things, right? Like even the Adelson case, right? Unless I am Wendy Adelson, like I'll never really know when she was driving to Trescott on that morning, what was her intention. One of the things that I thought about bringing up that I want to get your guys' feedback on at some point, maybe she was going to stop the crime. Maybe that's why she's on Trescott, right? So, those are theories. But in this case, in the Karen Reed case, this isn't a theory. These guys killed this guy. They killed John O'Keefe, and then they intentionally planted evidence to try to put it to frame an innocent woman. Now, is everybody equally guilty? No. Are some of these cops just totally incompetent? Yes. Right? Was everybody in on it? No. Were some of them in on it? Very likely, right? Who exactly was where doing what at what time? We don't know that. But what we do know with 100% certainty, 100% certainty, is that these guys are responsible for the death of John O'Keefe. It is not a question. And what I have comprised for you tonight is essentially the evidence. It is an evidence review. It is every reason that we can be 100% certain that Karen Reed is not only innocent, but to take it a step further, because here's the important point for us today. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts knowingly went after an innocent woman to save their ass. That's what happened. This was, oh no, we better double down. Remember asking along the way, like, why are they doubling down? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, she's clearly innocent. Remember after, right at the beginning of the first trial, when the ARCA information first drops, and you're like, come on, you guys, like, let her go. This is clearly, she didn't do it, right? She didn't do it. She's not guilty. What do? Double down. No, there's nothing new. There's no new information in here from the feds. So you have to start asking yourself, what are they doubling down for, right? Why are they doubling down? And then all of a sudden, you know what? It dawned on me. It's like they're doubling down because this is about self-preservation. This is about them actually committing a crime. They planted evidence. And the only way, you guys, the only way that isn't true, the only way that they did not plant evidence is if Karen Reed is guilty. That's the only way. There's no in between in this situation, right? You can't have it both ways. Either, right, that taillight gets there because the cops put it there, or there was an accident, and we know that there wasn't. So there is no other possibility. There's no other outcome even possible in this case. And that is what I really want to highlight, because at the end of the day, there is a police officer who was actually a legitimate, real good guy who lost his life at the hands of these corrupt, just horrible human beings. And then you have, when Aiden Carney actually draws attention to this case, what happens? They go after him to shut him up. And now they're trying to bring Karen Reed into it because, again, it's self-preservation. So that is why I said, this is insane. This is insane. It's insane. And I can't let it go. We got to do something. So that is why I want to show you some of the evidence. And I'm going to start with somebody you probably all know, or at least have seen. I want to show you some clips from the most recent video from Sergio Denaro at Truth Revealed. And I want to show you this because, boy, man, when I saw this, just, again, you just get so angry. But here we have, he did a wonderful thing, and it was really clever. He took that ABC interview that they did the day after the verdict, where they were saying that, they were the victims here. And he brought in somebody else who has no relationship with him to do a cold read on what they were seeing. And you can see how they match up. And it was very, very clever. And what you see here, and it's so obvious. I mean, even to somebody who knows nothing about psychology or body language, you're sitting and you're watching it. You can feel it in your body that something is just wrong, right? It's like, what is going on here? Something is just wrong. But when you actually think about what it is that is wrong, it is so unbelievable that it's like your mind wants to shut it down. Like, you don't even want to think about it anymore, because it's just, how is this happening? But it is, right? So that is why I want to show you some clips from that. We're going to do a little evidence review. And then, we can talk about whatever it is that you guys want to talk about. Because, again, I feel like we're kind of in between all these different worlds right now. And I know for me, I'm being pulled all over the place, 7 different directions all at once. So let me pull this up. And yeah, again, if you haven't seen this, it's just unbelievable. So here we go. Whoop. Sorry, wrong thing. All right, I'm sharing my screen. Okay. Okay.
And that's why we're here, because there's nobody left to stand up.
All right, let me rewind it a little bit.
Transcript as well. We'll start with some of the questions from the video.
The criminal justice system has let us down at every turn. And yesterday was the final letdown. And that's why we're here, because there's nobody left to stand up for us.
First, I just want to mention that when Brian Albert does a little intro there, he says, there's no one looking out for us. You see right off the bat that they're presenting themselves as the victims here. Even if you believe that Karen Reed is guilty, the victim in this case was John O'Keefe. It's not the McAlberts. So the fact that they had to be witnesses in the trial, lots of people do. When somebody presents themselves as the victim, and it's very clear that they're not the victim in this case, that right away, that's an indicator. It's a huge indicator of deception. And that's something that you'll see in relationships a lot. So be aware of that. That right away is a bad sign.
Yeah. So, and I want to comment on that. I think we all know that. I mean, just from, we talk a lot about narcissism. I feel like it comes out all the time when we're, oh, hi. Hi, Liz. So, I feel like it comes up all the time when we're sort of talking about, true crime, right? Narcissism is, antisocial tendencies. It's a part of the world that we're swimming in here. And I think that it's so easy to not acknowledge how much, identifying oneself as the narcissist is part of what it means to be a narcissist. Sorry, identifying oneself as a victim is part of what it means to be a narcissist, right? They're the victim. They're always the victim. And I know that this is an act, and I think it's an act that Brian Albert really has gone all in to try to sell to us because his life depends on it, right? He has to try to present himself as an outraged, innocent guy, as the victim, to try to defend himself and his family. Of course, it is not the way to do it. If you really cared and you really wanted this to go away, fastest way to get it to go away is just to not engage. But they can't do that. They double down again, right? And one of the things I didn't know then that I know now that I think was behind that interview with ABC, one of the things that was behind it, they lost their witness advocate. So remember, throughout the trial, there were many references to having their witness advocate. The witness advocate was one of the 5 people that Jennifer McCabe called early that morning, right after the feds showed up at the house, right? That was who she called. The state, Morrissey, took away their witness advocates as soon as the trial ended, literally like that day. And so I think part of what they were doing was in response to that. They were angry, right? So they were coming out in anger. And that's what this big show was all about. But I wanted to just point out, right off the bat, what do we see? He is trying to make himself and all of them the victims, even though there's only one victim, really, in this case, and that's John O'Keefe. And then, of course, how they have tried to go to great lengths to frame Karen Read is really, I think, at the end of the day, what makes this case doubly disgusting, doubly unimaginable. How you could do that, how you could go to great lengths to try to frame an innocent person, a person you know is innocent. That is evil on a level that's hard it's hard for me to even grasp.
As far as getting the truth.
Think real long and hard before you're a witness in a case, because no one protects you. And it's very, very sad. Think real long and hard before you're a witness in a case.
Now, where I paused the video here, you can see this is the baseline of her face. So some people, their mouth naturally sort of curves down. Some people, it naturally kind of curves up. Some people just always look like they're smiling. Some people always look like they're frowning. Nicole Albert sort of has that negative frown all the time. That doesn't actually tell you anything about her personality. People's facial muscles are just structured differently. We have a tendency to think that people who have resting frowny face are generally unhappy people. That's not the case. So we do notice that she's nodding here, but let's continue. So here we have the very typical, like this is a perfect version of a maybe face. Usually it happens in about.
All right. So what I want to point out here, and part of what I want to show about Nicole Albert, right? Nicole Albert, I believe her presentation in this particular video, there is a lot of grief. A lot of grief. The sense that she really does feel sad about what's happened to her family. And I think that's a really, really, Sherry, 100%. They look very different. They've aged, extraordinarily, right? Particularly Nicole, because imagine, first of all, what it's like to, have Brian Albert be like the only guy you've ever been in a relationship with for 25 years or more, right? They've been together since they were in junior high school. It's unbelievable to even think about for me. But so this is the father of her children, right? They have 5 kids, I think, right? 5. So this has ruined their lives. It's my understanding that these two are separated. I can only imagine what it's like to be living with this every day. And that's one of the things, right? The truth is, they don't really get away with it. They get away with it in terms of not being in prison, not being in jail. But Nicole Albert is living with this every day. And I do believe that this face that we're seeing and just generally her presentation throughout this video, it really, you can see the grief. You can see the suffering, right? You can see it. And I think, I think, so good question. Sorry, I picked the wrong person. I'm sorry about that. I hate when I add something and highlight it and then I don't know what the conversation was about. Apologize for that. Yeah, she's a miserable lady. Correct. Yes. She's a miserable lady. That's exactly the point, Twigs. Thank you for that. That's exactly the point. She's a miserable lady. They're all miserable. I mean, that's the truth. And Brian Albert is like the king of misery. I really believe that. And can you imagine? Check this out. Imagine for a second that you're Jennifer McCabe. It's just wild. That you're Jennifer McCabe and you have befriended Carrie Roberts so that you could keep her close and ultimately help you to convince the rest of the world that you did not murder John O'Keefe, but you did. Right? But you did. And Carrie Roberts speaks to her every day. Every day. Every day. Every day. Think about that. Think about it boggles my mind. Could you imagine being Jennifer McCabe? How does that woman sleep at night?
Back and forth. So you present something, usually a quick short point, and then somebody hits you with a counterpoint. And that's when you make the maybe face. You're not agreeing with them. In your mind, you're thinking.
Right. I forgot to mention, you probably already know this. I think, maybe not. But yeah, anytime there's incongruence in somebody's reaction. So when one side of the body is doing one thing and the other side of the body is doing something completely different, that is deception. And I think for some reason, I feel like that may be obvious. I don't know. Or at least when I say it, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? Because incongruence literally means that half of your brain is telling your body to do one thing and the other half is literally telling the body to do something else, which Sergio talks about a lot, which is why I like him so much, because he talks about how the brain, controls the body and ultimately why we express the way that we do as a result of that.
They're wrong. So if you're talking to your friend and you tell them, hey, I met someone, I think this person's the one, and they do this. That's the maybe face.
Good example.
That's maybe they're the one, but in my mind, I'm saying no, they're not. Mm-hmm. So that maybe face is a disagreement with the message that is presented. Usually it's from the other person. But if you make the maybe face when you're talking, it means you don't agree with what you're saying. And then here you also see the one-sided shoulder shrug, which is a universal sign of deception. So when you see that, it means somebody doesn't agree with you. Now here we're going to see a version of eye shielding.
No one protects you. And
she's not just blinking there. It didn't just stop at where she blinks. She says, no one's protecting you. Now that when you close your eyes to make a point, that is eye shielding. And what you're doing is you're trying to block the sensory input that comes in. When you're saying something that you know isn't true and you feel like probably the whole world knows that it's not true, you don't want to see that look of contempt or disgust or a look of disagreement with what you're saying. So you don't want to see that, and you just close your eyes and pretend like it doesn't exist.
So true.
Now there's other ways.
So I want to just point out something about this. Nicole does this eye shielding throughout the entire video. Many of them do throughout this interview. But I also was watching, and I didn't think it was important enough to highlight it in a video format. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I was watching John Jackson's response to something recently where he's talking about the data, the car data, and this guy does so much eye shielding. It was wild to watch, and it made me think maybe it is starting to get to some of them. Maybe all of us, the constant sort of putting it out there that the data really doesn't say anything. I mean, the data was just basically nonsense, truly. Maybe that's, maybe.
It's to High Shield, and you'll see that in a second.
It's very, very sad.
Very, very sad.
Now,
So
I just want to say too, I don't think the O'Keefe family will ever get there, but some of the friends might. Some of the friends might. Some of the friends of the family might. They might. And I also wonder this all the time. I really wonder this all the time. I wonder if I'm friends. So I guess Carrie Roberts is probably too close to them. But imagine that all of a sudden, imagine you catch Jen saying something. Imagine you catch her in a lie, or you catch her saying something about that whole event. She slips up, right? Man, I wonder, does that, send like a red flag out in Carrie Roberts' mind? Like, wait a minute. She said one thing, now she's doing something else. Like, are any of these people registering that there is this possibility that their belief is misguided on this, that these people actually are responsible for the death of John O'Keefe? Because I'll tell you something, just looking at evidence alone, just looking at the evidence, guys, it's pretty slim.
I think it's very clear what's going on here. But before I analyze the verbiage, let's get Liz's take on this and see what she thinks.
Well, what it tells me is that when she says there's no protection as a witness, her body language doesn't seem to reflect genuine hurt or betrayal. Instead, it seems to hint at some deception or emotional distancing. So we see a head nod, and what looks like agreement might actually be overcompensation, a rehearsed gesture that's used to sell a story she might not fully believe herself.
And it's very, very sad.
And then we see the exaggerated
very
frown,
sad.
like a maybe face, that dramatic upside down smile that feels a little performed, not felt, because genuine sadness, that's going to show up in brief, involuntary micro expressions. And this one just looks a little more like emotional fabrication. Then we have the one shoulder shrug. That one signals uncertainty. So saying something definitive like, no one protects you, while shrugging.
I want to
And
show
then he
you.
maintains it a little more
I want to
easily.
just show you quickly this response, the Chris Albert response here, if I can find it.
Patterns we had nothing to do with. And then he maintains it a little more easily later on. So
Here we go.
Let's watch what he has to say.
And I think the reason we all stayed quiet is because we were just witnesses. This is a thing that we had nothing to do with.
They all stayed quiet. Anyways, so what I noticed from Chris Albert is that he's looking down the whole time. So the first thing that I thought is maybe he's autistic, because I know that feeling. I am autistic, and when I talk, I have to look down. The reason for that is that I have an internal monologue. When I think, I hear my own voice. I don't see anything visually. It's all auditory. As I'm talking, if I'm looking at you in the face or in the eyes, I see all of your micro expressions and body language, and I'm trying to say something. Let's say I'm trying to tell you about how my fantasy football team is doing, which is not good, by the way.
So,
But
wait, this is funny to me. I have met Chris Albert at his pizza shop, and there's, Chris Albert does not present as neurodivergent, not in any way, shape, or form. He's overly emotionally expressive. So while I understand the signs that Sergio is referencing here, the reason for those signs is he's shielding his eyes. He's looking away because he feels tremendous guilt. And if you just watch his testimony, you'll see it all over the testimony. Kit Gracie, dyslexic Angle, says, do we think this is a dog whistle to Canton residents that they don't want to be witnesses against them? It's an interesting question. I think it's probably a secondary gain, right? I think it's probably a secondary gain. I mean, if you're a Canton resident, I went to high school in a town very similar to Canton, a little bit smaller, so even smaller, but very similar in Massachusetts. And you really do. There's like 10 families, right? Everybody's last name is, even if you don't know them, you know their cousin or their parent or, their sibling. Everybody kind of does, know everybody. It's like not 6 degrees of separation. It's like 1 degree of separation, no matter where you are, who you're around, what you're doing. Right. So I have to believe if you're a Canton resident, many of them already have a great deal of familiarity with this crew, with these people, right? With the McAlberts, somehow, some way. Again, they went to high school with them. They went to high school with their relatives. There's so many of them. I mean, that's the other thing. Think about how many people we're really talking about, because, you have Brian Albert has 6 siblings. Okay. So he has 6 siblings. Then each of them have how many kids? Chris and Julie have 3. He has 5, right? So that's 8. Between 2 of them, there's 5 other siblings. So you start doing the math in your head. Jennifer McCabe has 4. I mean, that's a whole other discussion, but so you start doing the math on just doing the numbers quickly on what the odds are that if you live in this town, you are 1 degree of separation away from some of these people. So I think there's already that sense there. I think people already know what they're up against or putting themselves up against. The fact that Chris Albert still sits on this select committee is, I mean, it's almost just shocking. So, I don't know. I think it's a good question. I just don't know if at the end of the day they even need to do that, because it's very likely that many of the residents of the county already have a sense of that, right? And it's in a way like, I don't know if you saw the guy who's doing the vehicle work on Karen Reed's car. For some reason, I don't know why, I didn't get this. Maybe some of you know. He's talking about how much that work is going to cost him out of pocket. And I'm thinking, why is he paying for this? Shouldn't the state be paying for the car? But okay, apparently not. Apparently they're just giving her back a car that is essentially gutted on the inside. Maybe it works. I guess it's drivable, but totally gutted on the inside. And so he says it's going to cost him a couple $1,000s, but he's happy to do it. So, I do think, having spent a little time in Canton, there's a tremendous amount of support for her and for against the McAlberts too. So I think they are insulating themselves with people like them, right? Like many people do. So they're probably shielded to some degree by, just staying with their people that just keep feeding them, the same garbage that, making them feel less guilty about everything. But then you have this external community that I feel like is really warm and very supportive of against them, right? Very supportive of certainly of Karen Reed. Definitely when we were there, you got that vibe. Every place you go downtown in Canton, I mean, Chris Albert is there, right? He's got his pizza shop on that main street. And, people in the coffee shop are really friendly and nice. And my sister was asking everybody about the case specifically. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about, do you think she's guilty? Do you think she's innocent? So, and 90% of everybody was just very friendly, open, and felt like she was innocent. So that's why, her defense team never had to pay for food ever, right? Never paid for anything. Yeah. And this is also, you guys have heard me say a number of times now that I would love to be able to debate somebody on who believes wholeheartedly that Karen Reed is guilty. The problem is that I don't know what evidence they're looking at. Last time we were together, so a week ago, I left our live and I went home and I said, all right, you know what? Let me look and see, what is the evidence? What are people who are anti-Karen Reed? And thankfully, many of you sent me emails with suggestions about different channels to check out. So I did do that. And, the evidence, right? So one of the things that I found, for example, which I put out a response to, one of the things I found was saying that, it was Karen Reed that deleted the Ring video. It's like, no, nope, she didn't. We have total confirmation on that. So just in case you missed it while the trial was going on, right? So yeah, that's the thing. I would love to be able to debate it. The problem is that I just don't think that those people that really do believe she's guilty have a lot of knowledge. I think that most of what they're going on is like, you know, she probably did it and it's like a gut feeling. It has no bearing in fact or, evidence. Because even the folks who say that, oh, that car data, that's the smoking gun. I mean, you just have to dig at that for like 4 seconds and it's absurd. It's just the most absurd idea ever, right? So, yeah. So, I love debate and I would be more than happy to do it. I just don't know what evidence they're drawing from. Then people will say, oh, well, Karen Reed well, Jen McCabe didn't do the Google search. Well, but she did do the Google search, right? She absolutely did do the Google search. So, it is what it is. It really is what it is. So let me see if I can find just a couple of little snippets that I wanted to show you from this, and then we can move on from this. And I want to jump into some other things that I found as I was digging around in the videos over the last few days. All right, let's see.
What I want to interject here is what's going on when you're listening is you're not actually hearing every word. The Wernicke's part of your brain is receiving that information and it's compressing it. Let's say you're losing resolution. From your eyes, you're taking in high definition video. From your ears, you're taking in high definition audio. But your brain just simply doesn't have the processing power to actually process everything the way that it is. So it compresses that information down. You just follow the train of thought, and then a narrative gets reconstructed in your brain using the train of thought, not the actual words themselves. That's why I write everything down and then show you it in print. Let's move on to the next question.
He's talking about Chris Albert.
We did the civic duty, came and told the truth, and that's it.
Did you pick that up? Did you pick up the indicators as they were coming there? I'm stopping him in the middle of this because there's a few things that I want to hit on this that I don't want you to miss. So he says, we did the civic duty. He didn't say our civic duty. When you take possession and you take ownership of something, that is commitment. You're putting yourself in that situation. What he's doing here is the exact opposite. He's taking himself out of it. He says, we did the civic duty, which means that it wasn't their civic duty. There's reasons for that, but we won't go into that right now. Then he says, came and told the truth. So if they told the truth, he would want to be a part of that. So he would put himself directly into that. We came, or I came, and told the truth. We have the commitment formula here. I plus past tense plus active voice means it's possible that it's true. That formula doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. It just can't be true if you don't have all the parts of the formula. And what we have here is a missing we, which includes a missing I. So came and told the truth. So he can't put himself in there because he wasn't a part of going and telling the truth. And that is it. Let's listen to the rest of his statement here.
People turn this thing into a tailgate party, it looked like some days. Board games, cornhole, cookouts. This is a guy that was murdered. And it's atrocious for that family.
Okay, so he says, again, he's redirecting your attention. In the beginning, it was redirecting who is the victim. It's not John O'Keefe, it's me. And now he's saying that all of these other people, you, are playing games and it's a party for you. So now he's displacing blame onto everyone else. It's your fault and I'm the victim, is the crux of his argument here. And this is the reason why Brian Albert is the leader of this group. You'll notice everyone looks at him before they talk to get his approval. Is it my turn? Like, should I talk? Is it okay for me to say the stuff that we rehearsed now? You'll see that look in their eyes as we go through this. Why is he the leader? Because he's the one who's going to present the message. Now,
all right, so this is what I wanted to point out here. Brian Albert does this thing over and over where he's masterful at it. For example, the board games, cornhole, cookouts. He's talking about something really serious, but then he says things that are so kind of out of left field, and they're funny, right? So he says these deadpan, funny comments, and in my mind, I kept getting distracted by them. I could see it. I could feel myself going, okay, I'm analyzing, and somebody has asked me to do an analysis of his testimony. So this is kind of how this came to mind. recently. And I see that this works so effectively because it throws me off course. I get distracted by these, kind of just out of nowhere, very, um, they're like misplaced. You're like, wait a minute, we're talking about someone being murdered and he's talking about playing cornhole and cookouts. And it's just, the whole thing doesn't fit together. And he does this all the time. If you watch his testimony closely, both on direct, under cross-examination, he does it throughout. And it's fascinating and it's so effective. I immediately found myself falling victim to it. So Brian Albert is who we're up against, right? I mean, I don't know how else to say it. That's the truth. That's who this is really all about, right? I mean, because he's the guy in charge of all of them. And if you haven't seen this full video or the original interview with Matt Gutman, right? It's a whole nother conversation we can get into maybe later. But if you haven't, go back and watch it. It is shocking how they're completely submitting to Brian Albert. It's like it's almost just shocking. I don't know how else to say it. It's like, how are they're just totally submitting. It's full submission. It's wild. Okay. So let me now pull up what I wanted to, the other thing I wanted to take a much closer look at. Now, this is, like I had said earlier, what I wanted to focus on tonight was a review of the evidence, taking a look at evidence that the Commonwealth is guilty. And while, Karen Read is innocent, inadvertently results in the Commonwealth is guilty of planting evidence of actual criminal behavior here, but it's not exactly the same, right? They're a little different focus. And so what I wanted to focus on in the evidence review is the guilt, the Commonwealth's guilt. And this is important, particularly right now, right? And my guess is that the timing on this, the fact that they're going to slow walk this to try to probably get as far away from the Karen Read verdict as they can, Cosgrove, so that, people forget about it, right? It's kind of, oh, that thing, what happened there again, right? It's just old news, so that she looks more guilty. I mean, it's just crazy. So Aiden looks more guilty, really. And if he ended up, I mean, I don't even want to think about that. I can't imagine that could ever happen. But the fact that they are legitimately pursuing putting him, very serious felony charges for witness intimidation against Aiden Carney, it is despicable, disgusting. There are a few words that are really how I feel about it. It's unimaginable. That's the truth. All right, so here we go. Let me bring this up. You're going to love this. Wait till you see. Okay.
Are you still the case agent in charge of this case?
Yes.
As the lead investigator and the case agent, you're aware it's also your responsibility and your obligation to investigate all potential individuals, right? All potential suspects.
Yes.
You're obligated to investigate anybody who would have a motive, a means, and an opportunity to commit the crime.
How about the fact that, I don't know why, when I first heard this, so I was there, I heard this the first time, but when I heard him say this.
Are you still the case agent in charge of this case?
Yes.
When I realized that Michael Proctor was the case agent, the lead officer on the Karen Read case, the John O'Keefe death investigation, through the first trial, when I heard that today, this happened today. I heard that today. I was like, what? What? This is the investigator on the case. I guess I should be thanking him in a way, because he basically was the insurance policy that Karen Read would never, ever go to prison, because of him, right? I mean, he was like the insurance for the defense team. I mean, can you imagine if even if any jury in the world, which would never have happened, had found her guilty, this would be like, okay, we'll just appeal it. I mean, it'll be overturned, you know? So somebody was mentioning, I think, Kylie, it might have been you, I think October. So we will find out, I believe at the end of October is when his hearings, the whole appeal process, at least the next two hearings where he's going to present his case. So it's actually the next two hearings are going to be really fascinating because we're going to get to see more of what Michael Proctor thinks the evidence is that supports him being able, why he should get his job back. And I guarantee you he's going to be throwing some of the other cops under the bus, you know, not directly, but in terms of what their, punitive consequences were in terms of how it compared to him, right? So I think that's the end of October. Yep. And yeah, of course, right? Of course they did. I mean, you look, Michael Proctor, you just want to get as far away from as possible. But you remember when Nan came on and we were asking her about his appeal process, and she was saying, you know, they just got to go through each sort of stage of the process. She felt very strongly that the person who was overseeing the case was already giving indications that she doesn't buy any of this. I guess the judge or the equivalent of the judge in that situation. But that there's more after this, that there's another stage or another leg to the appeal process once this is denied, which she was absolutely certain it would be. That, you know, and look, I think that one thing we can say for sure about the new, the colonel that came over, the new colonel, I forget his last name. It's escaping me right now. But the guy that came in from Rhode Island and ultimately took over the Massachusetts State Police, I think he is Noble. Jeff Noble is his name. I think he 100% would not allow this. I don't know how much power he has singularly, but I think he would do anything he could to stop it from happening.
As the lead investigator and the case agent, you're aware it's also your responsibility and your obligation to investigate all potential individuals, right? All potential suspects.
Yes.
You're obligated to investigate anybody who would have a motive, a means, and an opportunity to commit the crime or the offense, correct?
Correct.
Motive includes anything from financial gain to just be revenge, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Could be a lover's quarrel, correct?
Yes.
Twigs, is this are you talking about while we're narrating, while Alan Jackson narrating while we're watching the video of Brian Higgins outside by the vehicle? Because I think I remember. Is that what this is a reference to?
Or it could be someone who's interested in someone romantically, correct?
Could be an argument inside of a vehicle.
Oh my God.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, one of the things, you guys, that makes me so just outraged about this case is that you'll see it, it's coming up, but this was business as usual. And one of the things that Michael Proctor gives us really clearly is a sense that that's the way he sees this. He doesn't understand the firing because for Michael Proctor, he was just doing what he always did. This wasn't unusual. This was standard operating procedure. So he really doesn't get, to the point where, to the degree that he even tells us after all of this, talk about not reading the room. After all of this, everything this guy's been through, I guess this is probably truly ego as I think about it now. But, Matt Gutman in the interview asks him, is there anything you would do differently? And this guy says, nope, nothing. Maybe I would go back and, I guess, what do you say? Investigate a few other cars or something. What? I mean, it's shocking. It's just shocking.
What was your answer?
So, or it could be an argument contained inside a vehicle as well.
Ah, yeah, which is the conclusion you jumped to 17 hours into your investigation.
Text messages opens the door
Here it
for the
is.
defense's allegations that there was some sort of conspiracy and cover up here.
There's no evidence because it didn't happen. I spent 2 days on the stand. That was Alan Jackson's opportunity to bring that up and question me on it.
Specifically asking you whether you planted evidence.
Yeah, not one question.
Boston has a
You saw that, by the way, there was a one-sided shoulder shrug there. Did you see that? Not one question, and just one side of his body went up.
history of police and law enforcement corruption.
Yeah, that I agree with. Not in this case. Didn't happen here.
So why would it be so unreasonable for people to think, well, it's happened elsewhere and recently in Boston? Why could
I think one of the things that Michael Proctor is doing here, because I've looked very closely at his actual in-court testimony. One of the things that he's doing here is he's mincing words. So, he's able to say with so much certainty that, well, not in this case, because was there a whole group of cops working together to frame an innocent person? Not from his view. I think Proctor is really too stupid to see that Karen Reed is innocent. I think he probably believes that she's guilty, and the evidence planting was in an effort to ensure her guilt. That's why I think there's not even more obvious signs of his, incongruence. But believe me, almost nobody else in the trial does as much lying as Michael Proctor does. I mean, it is very transparent. And yes, Mary points out, he did say in this interview that we're watching here, that he defends this comment, saying that he and his sister, people say it all the time, like, oh, I just wish they would kill themselves. I mean, you see how he tries to minimize that it's a heavy thing to say. And of course, that's a lie too, right? Of course, he doesn't throw this around, right? And by the way, his statements are so rehearsed that he uses the same language over and over, recycles it anytime that he's defending the text messages, right? Regrettable language, immature texts. It's always the same. So they gave him, his lawyers probably gave him the rehearsed statement, and he's just kind of taken it and ran with it. But the scariest part of all of this is this guy does not think that he did anything wrong. He really doesn't. This is standard operating procedure. And that is why when you look at the Sandra Birchmore case, right? You look at even Miles King, where it seems like this is a case where that, at least on paper, the Miles King, most people, from what I can tell, there's no question about whether there was this guy did it, right? And yet you see that they didn't conduct their business correctly. They did not dot all of their I's and cross all of their T's. Of course they didn't, because did they ever? You have to ask yourself, did this group of cops ever do it, right? Did they ever play by the rules? Did they ever, correctly use search warrants? To me, one of the things that just never really got highlighted in the Karen Reed case is he takes the car without a search warrant. He just takes it, I guess at this point, it doesn't even matter, but business as usual, right? These guys just, yep, this is how we do it. This is how we do. This is just how we do. It's just, it's horrible. It's horrible. Twig sends $5 and says, in his texts, when AJ says something stinks, he says yes. Jackson attributes the yes to another animal we can't prove, or powers that be want answers. In his texts, when AJ asks something stinks, he says yes. Jackson attributes the yes to another animal we can't prove, or powers that be want answers. I missed the first part of this. What is the first part of this? Twigs, what is the first part of this? Right? This isn't about the moving cars. So I'm curious about what you think is there a mishap in terms? I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I just don't know what you're saying that you think it means per se, but I'm very curious.
When it happened in Canton.
They believe that the state police, multiple units within the state police, the Canton Police Department, about a dozen civilians are all in this conspiracy.
So here it is. This is what I was trying to say earlier. This is what he does, right? This is what Brian Albert does too. So they create this definition of this ridiculous idea of a conspiracy where 100 people are involved, and look how crazy we all are for thinking that there's a conspiracy where 100 people, nobody came forward. Oh my God, can you believe it, right? And of course, nobody's actually saying that at all.
Frame a woman we don't know. And over the last 2
And actually, you know what? If I were him, I would rather be thought of as a part of a conspiracy than the moron that I actually really think he is. I just think he's too stupid to be a part of a conspiracy. Having said that, I don't even think it was his idea to plant the taillight. I think he just was very likely the soldier, like the good little soldier that may have not even definitively been the one to do it. Now, I think that's a question also, and I guess I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. I'm very clear that it would have been at the hands of Brian Tully that these guys planted taillight. Brian Tully would have had to have been directly involved because he was the one kind of calling all the shots. He was the one that was organizing the timeline for when the CERT team was going to start. So Brian Tully was really ultimately the one responsible for planting the taillight. The question is, right, is that 36 miles that the car mysteriously has on it, is that related to planting taillight? Could be. Because I'm a believer that the video that we see of the tow truck, so remember in the videos that we've all seen, we see the video where the tow truck outside of the police department, and we see Buchanan and Proctor are following the tow truck, I think in Buchanan's truck. The next thing we see is the tow truck driver or somebody moving the car into the garage. And then we see that white outline, like where the car had already been there, of snow on the ground in the garage. So part of me wonders, okay, is that where this mysterious extra miles come from? Because there are missing mileage on this car. And I actually took the time the other day, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I did take the time to do the math on the miles. If we were working it backwards from when the Massachusetts State Police begins their testing, what the odometer reading was, and then we worked the equation backwards on the trips that we're certain of. For example, the tow truck, the trip to Dighton, the trip to One Meadows, 34 Fairview, right? The trip from the waterfall, just going back and thinking, okay, where has this car been? Where do we know this car has been in the recent history of the vehicle? And you will see that it doesn't equal 36 miles. It's not even close. So this car goes somewhere we are not privy to. And I mean, the only way, as far as I can tell, and I haven't had anybody give me any rational answer to this that I can tell, right? Where do those 36 miles come from logically? Because there's 36 miles when we do the odometer comparison from the quote trigger event, the backing event that Trooper Paul decided was when Karen Reed, hits John O'Keefe. From that moment to when he starts his testing, where are the miles coming from? I would really love to know the answer to that.
3 years, not one person said, wait a minute, I'm not going down for this. Here's what really happened.
Is there any part of the actual investigation that you would do over?
Because it's blowing up into this.
I think he does. And here's the reason. So, okay, I was there. You know the guy that they call, oh my God, what's the guy's name? The guy that they call Plevin. Okay. I didn't know who that was for a long time, but I would say like a year or so ago, he was somebody that Turtle Boy used to talk about a lot. he used to be kind of in with all those guys early on, trying to get the word out about Karen Reed's innocence. And then he starts interviewing and the guy, like Brian Higgins. He actually interviews Brian Higgins and starts talking to those guys. And I think at that point starts to believe them and thinks, oh, well, they're credible. And, the most likely answer is the most logical answer. And so he just starts slowly kind of thinking that Karen Reed is guilty. And, he is maybe the only person I could think of that at least believes that she's guilty. And I think really believes it based on something logical, though can't quite tell what those logical principles, thoughts, ideas are. So I think what Proctor why he believes it is because these are people he knows. Like, he's really close with Julie and Chris Albert. And he knows them enough. He knows the Alberts enough that he believes they wouldn't have done this. This is why this is the danger with these smaller communities, because you can't imagine if you know somebody really well. And I can see myself in this situation. Imagine that, think of the town or city, wherever you grew up, maybe like a family friend that you knew really well, that it would just be impossible if you're a cop and you're investigating a case to imagine that they are guilty. So I think that's what this is. That's what I think. I think he just believed them because Brian Albert is Brian Albert. He wanted to believe them because he was close to Chris and Julie. And think about it. His sister is his best friend in the whole world. It's a very close family. His mother, his sister, and he are very close. Julie Albert doesn't think that talking to his sister 60 times in like 6 months is a lot, right? We're not that close of friends. We're not that good of friends. Just 8 calls. How many of you can honestly even think of being on a phone call with somebody 68 times in the last 6 months? I have not even been on the phone 68 times in the last 6 months, let alone talking to one person, right? Like, are you kidding? You know how many phone calls that is? So that gives you an idea of the closeness. He tries to put distance between him and the Alberts, but he's close to them. So I think what happened here is he just got duped by his sense that they just can't be guilty, right? They just can't be guilty. That's it. It's just insane. Oh, Proctor refused to agree to AJ asking a yes or no question because the answer was no. He was replying to something stinks about how John O'Keefe was found. Oh, that's really interesting. So I would love to see those texts. I know I have them somewhere. Let's see if they come up. They might come up in just a minute here, if I remember correctly.
Crazy.
That's interesting.
So-called conspiracy.
Interesting.
Maybe I could have avoided it by,
he lies
looking at other
about
people's cars.
Just so you know, in reference, I did so many videos early on about his texts, what they meant, what he meant, the whole thing. And both just on paper, but then also during, his testimony. And he lies egregiously many, many times throughout that text read, both when prosecutors are asking about it, or when Lally's asking about it, or when AJ is asking about it. So he just lies, right? It's sort of like the stupid stuff. Like he refuses to say that he called the medical examiner a nutbag. Like, come on, at this point, Proctor, like, does anybody really care? If we know you did, right? Like, we know you did, like, who cares? But he just can't be honest. And one thing that he won't do, he just won't do it. It's like a red line he won't cross. And we saw this with Buchanan too, by the way. He will not throw other cops under the bus. He won't do it. He will lie. He will go to his grave lying about the behavior of other cops. We've seen it multiple times. There's even moments, I mean, we're talking about like hours into cross-examination moments where at that point, we've all kind of tuned out and glazed over, because even though it's interesting and important, by hour 4 of cross-examination of Michael Proctor, it's like you just can't even hear it anymore. But when you get deep into the weeds with the Proctor testimony, what you start to see is like he kind of just will stop answering questions. Like he just kind of goes moot. Like he just stops talking at certain points because he's not going to give you that answer. He's not going to tell you, he's not going to throw any of his fellow cops under the bus. He's just not going to do it. And it's just so funny because throughout this trial, what do we hear over and over? We're talking about the blue line, the blue wall, all of that. And man, it's just so true. And by the way, I had thought this had happened forever ago. Like, oh my God, what's her name? Come on, you guys. What's her name? Kelly Devers. Yes. Okay. So didn't Ms. Devers, didn't she like retire? I thought she resigned like 3 months ago. And then I saw this week all these news clips about how she officially resigned from the force. And that I thought she had already resigned. So maybe she just put herself on leave or whatever. That might have been what it was. I had already in my mind had her no longer on the force. So it was not a surprise to me when I heard that she had resigned. I mean, of course she resigned. Could you imagine having to be imagine every cop come on. You think that every cop in the state of Massachusetts didn't see Miss Devers testify in that case? None of them are ever going to let her live that down. Imagine, the way I never had brothers, but I had older cousins and they would torture me when I was little, right? Like I loved them. I mean, they were like my whole world. They were like, they were much older. They were like 6 to 15 years older than me. So we were not peers, right? I was like the little one that hung around them. And I remember, right? Like they would tease me endlessly. Like, they'd call me like Sasquatch because my feet were big or whatever, right? And I feel like Devers, if you are a female on that around all of those cops, that's kind of gotta be what it's like. They probably would torture you. Just endless teasing. And I imagine that that's an impossible situation because, I feel for her only in the sense that there was no way that Kelly Devers could win. She could not win. There was no position that she could take in that situation on the stand during her testimony and come out probably like life is just normal again. Like there was no way she was going to walk out of there and everything was going to be okay. Right. I mean, she essentially went on to in front of the world, in front of all of her bosses, former bosses, right. And said, I can't be trusted because I make stuff up, right? My memory is faulty. So that was the excuse that she used to try to get away from talking to the feds, right? And it's like, man, I really wish she had pled I don't wish she had, but if I were her, wouldn't you just tell this woman, like, I plead the fifth? Can't you do that? Couldn't you just say, like, I plead the fifth? I mean, it's just, it's wild. Absolutely wild. Yeah. Kylie says that's why I never really blamed her for that. We have no idea what was said behind closed doors to make her say she was crazy under oath. Oh no, for sure. I mean, no, she didn't have a choice. She was threatened. I mean, look, even if all we know is what we know, even if the only thing that ever happened was, the police commissioner, she's like a rookie cop. Police commissioner calls you into his office and says, do the right thing. I got the message loud and clear of what he's saying. The question then becomes, how am I going to do that? Like, what do I do? How do I get out of this? I did tell the feds that I saw this. I can't testify to that. How the hell am I going to get out of this without being arrested for lying to the feds? And that was the way. She kind of pled insane. That's really what this was like. She basically pled insanity, which is nuts. Just nuts. The whole thing is so nuts. So of course, of course she resigned. And what chance did she have? There was like no chance. She had no shot. Twiggs sends $5 and says, with Sergeant that BS with Sergeant Good makes me rethink him. Sorry, the BS with Sergeant Good makes me rethink him replacing Dever at dispatch. Good saw Higgins that night. Let's think about that. The BS with Sergeant Good makes me rethink him replacing Dever at dispatch. Sergeant Good makes me rethink him replacing Dever at dispatch. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I do think Good saw Higgins that night. I think it's really interesting that he has Dever take the desk. But she wasn't, I mean, she was there for days by the time. So that was the night before, right? The night before, I guess it's what, like 4 a.m., right? So we're talking about early 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning on January 29th. Sergeant Good goes, he's like the homicide sergeant or one of them, right? No, he is in charge of something specific to homicide. I forget exactly what it is. He's a homicide detective for the Canton cops. That's why he's there. So he replaces her because he has her replace him because he is actually, like, on paper, a homicide detective for Canton PD. Yeah, I think it's Sergeant Good. There's two of them. I think it's Gallagher and Sergeant Good, actually. I forget because they're not Massachusetts State Police, so I don't think of them as detectives at all, but they are. Yes. And look, the two cops that are very shady, obviously Lank to me, if there was anyone who was directly involved in a cover-up that was communicating with the McAlberts, certainly Mike Lank is the obvious, choice, right? I mean, he knew them. Yes, right, Twigs. Yes, that's what right. So Twigs, you're saying he replaces himself with Dever. Oh, I'm trying to get that up. Hold on. Yes, and I completely understand. He does replace himself with Dever. Yeah, he does. Which is interesting. I mean, yeah, look, anybody who's at the Canton Police Department, I mean, Brian Higgins, his office is at the Canton Police Department. That's where he sleeps when he has too much to drink and he doesn't want to drive back to his place. Right? You remember the night that in the text messages with Karen, he's going back and forth with Karen, and the night that she wants him to sleep over, the night of the Patriots game, that Saturday, I forget the exact date now, but it's, is it the Saturday before this? It might be. No, it's 2 Saturdays, I think, before the 29th. Anyway, I know the date. I remember the game, but this is a playoff game on a Saturday. With the Patriots game, it's their final game of the season because they lose, I think, to the Bills. And, John invites Higgins over and he goes because Karen's like, tries to get him to come, and he does. He actually, I think, sleeps at the Canton PD that night because he says, I have an office at the Canton PD. That's why he doesn't agree to stay over. Now, of course, he wasn't going to sleep over John O'Keefe's house that night, but the excuse he gives is that he has an office at the Canton PD, right? So that's where Brian Higgins is stationed out of. This is like his home. He sleeps in his office. And not it doesn't sound by his text, if you look carefully, like it's a pretty frequent thing. So these guys, of course, they were used to seeing Higgins. He was always there. Sean Good saw him. Good even says he saw him. I believe. I'm 90% sure that he says he saw him. And it wouldn't be unusual because he was there frequently in the middle of the night. That's why I don't think anybody, nobody's red flags went up that the fact that he was there that night. He probably really did need to, number one, move the car. That was something that he, probably was supposed to do, although not at that time, probably hours before. And it was something he did all the time. So it wasn't unusual for him to be at the police department. What's unusual is what he was doing at the police department. And that's the part that I have to tell you, I haven't started yet, but I did because I told you I've got the 24-inch monitor now. And I went to go return to the snow video because I have not gone back to it yet since I first got it. And I saw that there were like the ghosts in the footage. I mean, that was like months ago already, and I still haven't had a chance to go back to it. But now with this big screen, I immediately noticed, wow, okay, like I can see much more clearly now. It's amazing the difference of the big screen. It's truly amazing. And it's not like my laptop was a fine size. It wasn't like looking on, my phone, but I just, don't have great eyes.
Maybe we could have interviewed a little sooner, but overall, myself and every detective in that office worked this case like we always do. So I wouldn't change anything.
Wouldn't change anything. Nothing. Of course not. Who would change anything? Of course. Okay. Yes. All right. So, for those of us that came on to the Karen Reed case later, and by later, I mean at the point of the first trial and after, there was so much that went on from the time of the crime to the first trial that was unfathomable. And even when I look back on it now, and just from digging around, I mean, some of the things that was withheld from the defense. They had to fight for every bit of discovery, and it sounds like the Kelsey Fitzsimmons judge, may be swimming in the Bev Canoni camp, which is never a place that anyone should ever want to be. And one of the things, so I'll read this to you because it's just so disgusting. So on August 25th of 2023, Attorney Little emailed ADA Lally requesting reports, photographs, handwritten notes, and mapping documenting the recovery of taillight pieces from 34 Fairview Road. Now, this is about the taillight, right? So that's what we're talking about. This is a review of evidence that the Commonwealth planted the taillight. There's no question that they did, but what is the actual evidence of that? Well, on August 25th of 2023, so this happens on January 29th of 2022, the Commonwealth finally produced photographs and reports regarding the items of physical evidence that had allegedly been recovered from the Albert residence. Okay. Can you imagine? They only just produced the physical evidence. How frustrating must that be? Could you imagine being on this defense team? Just like, it's like banging your head against the wall just over and over and over again. That's something that I'd love to talk to David Yannetti about, right? I mean, how do you deal with the frustration? I mean, just like you're being kicked in the head. One of my favorite speeches is his "How dare you" speech. Obviously, I use it in my open. It's just a classic. Just, it's almost like you're like just watching a movie because it's this beautiful speech that he gives about, Karen Reed's rights and early on back in 2023. And, you just feel the frustration because this is what they dealt with the entire time. They had to pull just for any bit of evidence, scraps of evidence from this judge, they had to pull and pull and pull and pull. It was insane. So they don't even turn all over any information about the taillight that they found on the scene. Because remember, the first group of cops don't find any taillight, right? They're the first group of cops, okay, that morning, Gallagher, Sean Good, all the Canton people, they find John's body, obviously, flagpole, fire hydrant. That is where they are obviously looking at evidence. That's where they are. So they get the blood in the Dixie cups, right? The leaf blower, the glass that they find over there, whatever. 10 hours, 12 hours later, Brian Tully arranges for this CERT team, this group of Massachusetts State Police who essentially are volunteers from other troops, I don't even know what they're called, I guess troops, who come together and are trained to, really, they're like missing persons, a group who will go out and look for missing something, missing people, missing evidence, whatever. So they're like a specialized team who look for missing whatever. And that CERT team, okay, so they're looking in the road. They never look where John's body was. They never go to where the body was said to have been and look. They do not. I mean, it's so hard to imagine. And you can see it for yourself when you look at the photos of the scene from that night in the news. There's snow. It's untouched snow across the lawn at the Albert's house that night, right? They never actually go onto the lawn. And that makes me think, right? So first thought that came into my head just now is, well, is very likely that's to protect Brian Albert, right? Just, look, it wasn't him. See, we're not even looking on the lawn. We're not even looking at the house. So what if the body was found under the flagpole? We're not even going to go on to Brian Albert's lawn, right? I mean, that is so telling. I mean, think about that. Just imagine that it's your house that a dead police officer is found on the lawn of. You don't think that those cops are going to go through your lawn? Yeah. Okay. Right. So anyway, I digress. So on July 25th, 2023, the Commonwealth finally produces photographs, reports regarding the items of physical evidence that had allegedly been recovered from the Albert residence in January and February of 2022. Photographs of the bags containing items of evidence, which were produced for the first time. They don't even know about the taillight searches, the 40-something plus taillight, where the chief of the Canton Police Department is driving past the house and taillight is just revealing itself, right? The defense team doesn't even know it happens until July of 2023 when they see some like brown evidence bags with, Proctor's signature on it, and it says taillight pieces. That's how they get tipped off to the fact that there was this taillight. These searches were not referenced or otherwise documented in any reports, memoranda, or notes produced by law enforcement to date. There's no report of this. The only reason the defense is even aware of these additional searches is because bags containing the taillight pieces were marked with the dates on which the pieces were found and then photographed by criminalists at the MSP lab. I mean, and the thing is, like, they're sloppy too, right? They're just sloppy. Like, you don't care. Like, you're trying to hide it on one hand, but then the MSP lab people, the criminalists, come in, take photos. Of course, it's going to make it over. It's just, it's so frustrating. And like I said this before, I'll say it again. Michael Proctor tells you he would never do anything different. So of course he should have his job back because clearly he was a quality police officer to begin with, even if this didn't happen, right? It's shocking. It's so shocking. Raul Thomas says the CERT team also missed the Albert Rock. Yeah, wouldn't you love to know who put that there? What do you think? Who put that there? You think that was like Colin Albert? Right? Like, who did that? Who put that there? I would love to know, right? Would love to know. Really, I would. Okay, wait. I have this. Okay. All right. So Twig says, last message tonight. One podcaster suggested John O'Keefe being under the flagpole is likely showing regret. Oh, that's interesting. Because it's a flag, because of the flag. There's a lot of regret in this case. I mean, I definitely believe that whether it was Brian Higgins that, threw the punch, we all obviously know that Brian Higgins feels terrible, terrible, guilt for sure. I know that, the one thing I will say about Brian Albert's little performance that we saw earlier tonight is that there's that one moment where he says, I would have taken a bullet for John O'Keefe. I think that's true. I think that Brian Albert would have taken a bullet for John O'Keefe. He was a fellow Boston cop. It's just that on that night, at that time, because they were all absolutely wasted, and because John O'Keefe was in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong group of guys under the influence of alcohol, he lost his life because he fell, right? So, sure. I mean, I could buy that, certainly, right? I'm assuming that it was an American flag. I'm guessing. I mean, I see that in my mind. I'm assuming that that is what was on top of the flag. Assuming that is the case, yeah, sure. Especially given the fact that these guys are obviously very patriotic. They're all, law enforcement officers. So I imagine that it does have special meaning for them. I don't think that's why they chose that spot, though. I think they chose that spot because of the cover that it provided, right? Because it was on the tree line. So when you're coming down down Fairview Road, it's kind of like a hill when it's not a like big hill, but it is a bit of an incline that you're coming down, and then you get to Fairview, and the bottom of Fairview is on a curve. Like the actual Albert House was on a curve you can't really see unless you're driving it, and then you immediately feel the curve when you're going past the house. So that right at the place where where the street starts to curve when you get to the house is the tree line. And then right next to that tree line is the flagpole. My guess is that, remember, we do know that there was the car that, the Ford Edge that pulls up at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning. So my guess would be that the Ford Edge is there to help give shade to them from the front. And then the tree line is there to protect them from the side. My guess is that that was selected because of the cover that it offered. Could there be some world where subconsciously they also chose it because of the flag? Maybe, certainly. I mean, there's an argument to be made subconsciously, but I don't think that was the conscious choice. And I remember in the Body in the Snow documentary, one of the cops, not cops, sorry, one of the defense attorneys that supports the Alberts, he makes the argument that if they were really trying to that placement was indicative of it was a stupid choice. If they were trying to really make it look like an accident had happened, behind the house was like railroad tracks or something, why didn't they just put them out there? Look, these were very intoxicated people making one bad decision after another, after another, after another. And because of the amount of alcohol that these guys had consumed that day, one of the things that both Higgins and Albert are very careful not to say too much about is how much they drank. It's interesting because Brian Higgins does end up throwing Brian Albert under the bus by saying that he had outdrank him, that while they were at the hillside, remember, Brian Higgins asks Brian Albert to go to the hillside as they're coming back from New York from the alleged funeral that I don't think they went to, but whatever. So they were obviously in New York doing something. On the way back, Higgins asks Brian Albert to stop and join him at the hillside. My suspicion is it's much earlier, that they say they were there, late at the evening time, like maybe 8 p.m. It's late, closer to when they all end up at the waterfall. My guess is that they're there much earlier and that they're drinking exponentially more than either of them admit. However, Brian Higgins admits that Brian Albert drank twice as much as he did in the same amount of time. So they were wasted. If you look at Brian Higgins, we've all seen the waterfall video as he walks out and he's pointing at John and, you, me, let's go, whatever. Look at his face. I mean, he does this thing where he really drunk men, they like wipe their hands with their face. I think men do it, not women, just because we wear makeup. I mean, that's my guess. I don't know this, but so you're like, I'm less likely to just wipe my face because I know that probably it's going to smudge makeup all over me, or even if I am drunk, I'm probably not going to do that. But men will do it. Like when they're really drunk, they kind of wipe their face. You can see it very clearly in the video. My guess is Higgins was very, very drunk. I think they all were. my very first knee-jerk assessment, day one of this case, first weekend, my sister says, Sam, you got to check out this case. You really got to check it out. Go do the deep dive. And so I did it. And when I came back, the first thing I said was, if alcohol didn't exist in the world, John O'Keefe would still be here, right? So I don't think any of this was criminal. Some people do. Some people think it was intentional, it was malicious. And I think when we were here a few weeks ago, it was the first time I had ever calculated what I could see, which, I really could see this because of how mean girls Jen McCabe is. I could see that it's circulated around the waterfall. Possible. This is a theory. The theory is that, the secret about Karen Reed talking to Brian Higgins behind John O'Keefe's back circulates throughout the waterfall, like, the game of telephone. And by the time the waterfall comes to an end and everybody's going back to 34 Fairview, they want to try to separate Karen and John, because if they separate them, all the guys, if Jen is able to successfully take Karen away from John, then John is able to hear from all the guys, I guess, from Matt and Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, that Karen Reed has been talking to Brian Higgins behind his back. And of course, he has evidence. He's got the text, right? So, it would be easy to, hey, look, sorry about this, but here, hate to be the bearer of bad news. Here are these texts. That was the first time I'd ever calculated that possibility, that there was an intent to separate them so that everybody could essentially try to support out of like protecting John, right? Because for whatever reason, Jen McCabe feels protective over him. That was the first time I'd ever calculated that type of theory. I mean, it's not impossible. Sure. Do I believe that's what happened? No, but it could be. Absolutely could be. So Twigs, I do believe that they feel guilty. Absolutely. I don't think that they feel as guilty about throwing Karen Reed under the bus for some reason. I don't really know why. I do think they feel guilty about the murder. But again, I guess all I can say is, just putting myself in logically, what I would say is that they see it as like survive or die. Like, sorry, but it's either going to be me or you, right? Like Karen Reed says in the footage that they showed at the trial that they tried to, convict her on, where she says, Jen, it's either me or you. I think that's the way they see it with Karen. Like it's either, you or us. And so they felt like they had no choice because of the fact, and I've said this many times, but because Karen Reed was just out of her mind and kept saying, or said at all in any way, shape, or form, could I have hit him? Could I have, run him over? Whatever she said, did I hit him? That was all that, Brian Albert needed to hear to turn it immediately onto her. I mean, it's an unbelievable story when I think, honestly, that is, I think, Steven, that's so funny. I don't know why I'm trying to show that. That's hilarious. No way there was butt dialing during sexy time. I don't know that there's been much sexy time between Nicole and Brian Albert in like 2 decades. Since who's their youngest? Since their youngest child was born, right? Oh my God, that's funny. There's lots of rumors that like he's had all kinds of affairs. Again, who the hell knows? I have no idea, but I have heard that. Very, very funny. Yeah, so I'm just looking over at the chat. It's very funny. Look, like I said, maybe. Is it possible? Is it possible that they were trying to support John by getting Karen removed so that they could tell him about the text? I mean, certainly the text must play a role. I mean, right? Does anybody really think that the text didn't play a role at all? That they had nothing to do with the events of that night? It would be very, very hard to believe. Really hard to believe. Yeah. So I don't know. Uh-huh. With ARCA, so for those of you, I'm assuming everybody here has probably, seen lots of the ARCA testimony. But with ARCA, so much of their testimony for both of them was so important and so good that when you go back in and you're trying to pull clips to like make a point, it gets in the weeds real fast because there's so much. There's so much. Like almost everything they say is important and is evidence that there was no car accident. So it's all really, really important. And when you listen to ARCA, I know this is just so obvious, but I have to say the obvious, right? Like when you actually listen to ARCA and go through their testing and go through why they don't think there was a car accident, and then you think about the testimony of the accident reconstruction team for the prosecutor's office, it right. I mean, it's almost like it's not believable. Like you have a hard time believing that they actually like could show their face after putting this in front of the world, putting Welcher and Burgess in front of and Trooper Paul in front of us. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
So at that position, if there's impact to the arm at 15 miles an hour, it doesn't cause the taillight to fracture. And it's also important to look at the kinematics. If you look at the acceleration data below, that hand and arm is accelerated. The hand's accelerated up to the speed of the vehicle in about 2 to 4 milliseconds.
You mentioned kinematics on Friday. Do you hold any certificates in the specific area of kinematics?
Yes, it's covered in the basic crash investigation classes.
Okay, so you took a class, in other words, correct?
At multiple classes.
They introduced the idea of what kinematics is, right?
Correct.
Testified about that on Friday.
Yes.
Define kinematics for the jurors.
It deals with the aspect of motion.
It's a subfield of what broader field?
Kinematics.
No idea what kinematics.
Kinematics is a subfield of what broader discipline of science?
No
I'm
clue.
not sure.
No idea.
The debris that comes off of the taillight, the fragments, what speed would they be going at the point of impact when they crack and are released from the taillight?
At the impact speed or less.
In order to penetrate the sweatshirt and cut the arm across, would the shards have to be going faster or slower than the arm?
They would have to be going faster. If they're moving at a common velocity with the arm relative to it, they would somehow have to accelerate with more speed to catch up and go beyond the arm, essentially.
That point, when I heard that, now I don't even know, I'm just totally being honest with you here. Alan Jackson is so sharp. Like I don't even know, as I'm thinking it through, that I would have been able in that moment, the way that AJ kind of sees that so obviously and then pulls it from Dan Wolf. It's such an important point. To me, that basically seals the deal on the fact that they planted the taillight. They absolutely must have, right? Because the whole point here is there's no way that the body of John O'Keefe, number one, could have had taillight pieces on it if it's found where they say they found it, right? And number two, that the arm could not have been scratched by the taillight because the pieces could not have been going faster than the arm, which is so obvious when I hear him say it now. I mean, duh. But, going into this, having no idea about any of accident reconstruction, physics, any of this, just not thinking about it, right? These are not things that I'm commonly spinning on, right? So, of course, it's obvious now, but, this is the evidence that sinks the Commonwealth. I mean, this guy basically just proved that, number one, not only did John O'Keefe not get injuries from Karen Reed's Lexus, but that taillight pieces somehow showed up on John O'Keefe's clothing And oh yeah, it's really interesting because the Massachusetts State Police were the ones who confiscated the clothing at the hospital and threw them, right? Remember, the clothes are all wet, threw them in a bag, not curious at all about why there's vomit and all kinds of other stuff on the clothing. Don't even ask, why is there like 10 people's DNA? If we count all the DNA that's found all over John O'Keefe, why are there so many different DNA profiles? Why does the shoe have so many people's DNA on it that it can't even be tested, that it's rendered null and void, right? I mean, that's that, God, wouldn't you just love to get like all of their DNA? Like, I want Brian Tully, right? Because they did do Proctor and Buchanan's DNA. And we were told, at the very least, that their DNA was not found right on any of John's clothing. I'm pretty sure that's what we heard. But you'd love to know, whose DNA is it, right? I mean, so essentially what ARCA proved, and probably the reason truly why Hank Brennan fought so hard, I mean, did everything he possibly could, to make them seem like they were nefarious and evil and malicious. And they're just like two of the most straight up, like normal, nice, smart, academic types. Like Dan Wolfe is such a wholesome, he presents like such a wholesome guy that even when you're trying to like make something stick on him, it's just sort of like, just slides off because you can't do it, right? He's just look at this face. He's like too wholesome. And what did they prove? They proved somehow taillight got it on John's clothing. And here's the most important thing, right? John O'Keefe could not have gotten taillight on the clothing from contact with Karen Reed's Lexus. You just heard it. It's not even possible. Completely defies the laws of physics. And remember, I was going to include this and I didn't, just because I can only take Trooper Paul for so long. But do you remember the whole like spinning theory? Like the theory when Alan Jackson, if you haven't seen this, you have to see it. When Alan Jackson is actually cross-examining Trooper Paul in the first trial, and he's asking him, he's like, well, what is the theory? Like, what are you actually saying happened then? Like, how did John, get hit by the car and then get over there, like behind the car by the flagpole, with the car traveling 70 feet in reverse at 20 something miles per hour? Like, it's not possible, right? It's just not even possible theoretically. Never mind. It's just obviously not possible. Right. The pirouette. Thank you. So if you haven't seen it, you have to. It's just baffling because even Trooper Paul, with his limited understanding of anything, can't even invent a story that could even be close to plausible about how John O'Keefe's injuries could have been, could have come as a result of Karen Reed's Lexus, right? Because remember, he says, well, no, the injuries on his arm didn't come from being hit by the car. It came from after he was hit by the car and then somehow remade contact a second time with the broken taillight that broke when he hit the car, right? So in other words, the test that we just saw from ARCA absolutely disproved anything that Trooper Paul said. It's just not possible, right? It's just not possible. So that's sort of the point. It's not possible.
Again, so there's thousands of pounds of forces acting on the arm and also on the joint itself, not just the arm.
Look at that.
Or the bones we have to consider and how much force to fracture, but think of the elbow joint and think of the shoulder joint. It takes much less force.
Okay, yeah, remember, there's no broken bones. Look at this picture. No broken bones. Yep, no broken bones. So, yep, we know this didn't happen, right? This didn't happen.
Force to dislocate an elbow than it does to actually fracture it. There was no evidence or indication or diagnosis of any dislocations or fractures to the arm at all.
At all.
And the taillight material, did you make note of that in this frame?
I did, yes.
What direction is that taillight material going relative to the vehicle?
The back.
It's going forward.
And where is the arm?
The arm has been pushed away. Now, you have to remember, as that arm, if it contacts and fractures the taillight, it's not exposed to the fractured pieces that still exist on the taillight itself, because those pieces that fracture haven't gone anywhere because they're against the arm itself. And then as the arm moves away, the pieces then move with the vehicle.
Are the taillight pieces upon fracture moving at the same speed as the arm upon contact?
That's correct, yes.
Is that a matter of physics?
That is a matter of physics, yes.
Is there any possible way for the broken pieces of taillight to out-accelerate the arm upon contact when the arm's being deflected away from the vehicle?
It is not. I don't believe it's physically possible. That was not demonstrated in our testing, and I've never seen that demonstrated in any peer-reviewed articles. Now,
I love the way he says that. It's just, right? Like, no, but he tries to say it, in the correct way.
you can see here again also the light and the fragments are being propelled forward. So you also have to consider where Mr. O'Keefe was found. He was found in the yard about 10 or 20 feet from the road. There was no exact measurements. But if you look at the motion of the taillight, it's going forward. Now, if Mr. O'Keefe has to move diagonally to the top left of that corner, and if he's not hit with the center of mass, he can't get to where he ends up before the taillight fragments have already gone forward and been deposited on the ground. Average running speed is like 4 to 6 miles an hour. Even if this SUV is going 10 miles an hour, the lights fracture, they're dispersed on the ground, and then Mr. O'Keefe somehow ends up to his point of rest. But you wouldn't find the fragments on him because they've already been pushed forward, come to rest, before he even has a chance to get to where they find him.
Right. So, and those two clips from, Dr. Wolf and then Dr. Rentschler about the taillight pieces, it strikes me because, these guys, these cops thought they were so clever by, throwing little taillight pieces in John's clothing. Like, oh, that's going to do it. That's going to be the, like the nail in the coffin. We're going to get him. We're going to get her. We're going to nail Karen Read with this evidence, except for one small little thing. It isn't possible. It's not possible that taillight could have gotten on John O'Keefe's clothing from making access with the Lexus. It isn't possible. It's not possible. Some human being, and I think at a certain point, I don't have it here, but at a certain point, Dr. Rentschler does bring this kind of out. Like, it had to have been a person who intervened to, right? That's the only way this happens, is if a human being takes taillight pieces and moves them where they want them to be, right? In this case, on John's clothing. So it's just really ironic that they had to go the extra mile. It's very clear from Michael Proctor's texts that he was very worried about not having enough evidence to convict. And because this was a Boston police officer, they wanted to make sure they got a conviction. So what did these morons do? What they always do when they have to make sure they have a conviction, because it's very clear from Proctor's text. I mean, one of the most crystal clear things that you get from him is that this is something that they worry about all the time, right? This is something that they're always thinking about. You see what an investigator is always thinking about? Always thinking about, do I have enough evidence for a conviction? Do I have enough evidence to prove my theory of the case? And we see that in all these cases. The only problem here is there was nowhere near enough investigating before he created a theory of the case. And in most normal situations, you let the evidence guide your theory. Here, Michael Proctor came up with a theory and then did anything he could to try to find evidence, even if it didn't exist, to convict. And it's just so very clear what happened here. I mean, there's no question. There's no other outcome possible. They had to have planted taillight evidence. It just did. That's what happened, right? There's no other way. Karen Read's taillight did not break and get there any other way. Hold on, my dog is making noise. So, right? I mean, that's it. That's the only possibility that we have. And, it's just cannot be overstated. How do we just keep reiterating that? It's such an important point because it is still why they are never going to stop pursuing Karen Read. They have to make her guilty in order for them to be innocent. And it's no two ways about it. It's one or the other, right? because the only way, I mean, if Karen Reed is innocent, they're guilty. They are guilty. The police officers in their unit, in the office that is supposed to be, we're talking about the prosecutor's office cops, right? These aren't even just regular cops. These are the guys that are supposed to be like the heroes that, do the work of the prosecutor's office, like the good guys. This is supposed to be team good guy. And does anything about Morrissey and does this clan, anything about any of them strike you as being the good guys? Like there's nothing, not an ounce of integrity anywhere in this group, and do I think that they treated every case with the same kind of evidentiary, I was going to say rigor, with the same level of, zealous to put it on Karen Reed? Probably not. This case was unique because it was a Boston police officer, but they were just so sloppy, and it just shows you how stupid these guys are, because they did not have the foresight to say, they maybe not stupid, and not even cocky, but just how used to being in power. Like, we are so much in authority that we never even stop to consider the possibility that we should check our behavior, or that if we play the tape out long enough, maybe somebody will have a great, criminal defense team who's going to say, hey, this guy's planted a taillight, right? It just never crossed their mind, which means they've never been challenged ever, which is really interesting. And then, of course, we have John's injuries.
You are aware, Dr. Welcher, that Mr. O'Keefe suffered no fractures of any kind in his hand, correct?
So there were no fractures noted in the autopsy report, but they didn't actually x-ray from the records I've seen either his hand or his arm. So there was, at least according to the autopsy report, no overt fractures, but the x-rays I saw, none of them were the arm, and the autopsy report said no sternum, spine, I think it said torso. They didn't say that there were no fractures there.
Consider in reaching your opinions and conclusions in this particular case.
Yes, I have my list of materials I reviewed. I reviewed Mr. O'Keefe's autopsy report, the report of examination of his brain, the toxicology report, and the entire medical examiner file.
Yeah.
I studied 100 and some autopsy photos, including photographs of the brain.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I included this last minute about the x-ray thing, just something I had not spent that much time on in the past thinking about. But it's very clear that Hank Brennan, because the receipts, so when you look at the Aperture receipts, one of the things that it highlights without question is that Welcher was in the house ready to testify on redirect after ARCA for the defense, right? That's what Judge Bev ruled, I guess, to try to be fair, although it doesn't make any sense. It wasn't really fair at all, but whatever. After agreeing to allow ARCA to testify at all, she then agrees that Brennan can have his guy come up after ARCA to try to refute them, which would have been ridiculous anyway, because they just didn't have any way to do that or even get close. But what is very clear now, they charged, by the way, they charged the taxpayers, the state, for the flight to from California to here. It's a long flight. Welcher's making like $920 an hour by the end of this thing. Feels a little more like extortion, to use like an Adelson case word. It feels more like extortion. Really, it really does, because at the end, it's just like, he goes from making $720 to $9 something an hour. And he's charging for everything. So it really was a game time decision with Brennan. And it appears that he very much did not call him back because he withheld the x-rays on purpose. So what does that say? That says that, and by the way, the other thing, you got to take a look at these receipts from Aperture if you haven't already, because what they show is that these guys looked at everything. Now, you hear right here, like you hear Dr. La Posada says, I looked at all these things. I looked at all these pictures. I looked at the ME's reports. She looked at a lot of evidence, but she did not review the testimony of Tristan Morris. Because why would the medical examiner need to review the testimony of Tristan Morris, right? That doesn't make sense. Same thing is true with Dr. Wolf and Rentschler. Like, why? They've reviewed a lot. Why would they be reviewing the testimony of Caitlin Albert, though, right? Does anybody have any ideas at all why it is that an accident reconstructionist team that, is charging the taxpayers unimaginable money per hour for their time, what are they doing looking at all of this testimony if it's not to try to find some way to spin it so that Karen Reed looks guilty? I mean, what could possibly be the utility as an accident reconstructionist in looking over the testimony of people that had absolutely, like, okay, I could see you want to make an argument that they looked over, let's say Julie Nagel, because, and Ryan Nagel and the whole group with Karen Reed's car, right? They saw the car, they saw the Lexus, they have the timeline, they could tell you about the placement of the vehicles. Okay, maybe. I mean, it's a real long shot, but maybe. But Brian Albert Jr., like what insight do you think Judson Welcher got from listening or watching the testimony of Brian Albert Jr.? Right? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Wait, Twigs. I see Twigs has got a comment. Okay. What are we saying? Twigs sends $5 and says, Judd already admitted he didn't know about x-rays. Right. Absolutely. It would make his already terrible testimony seem absolutely. Yes, that's right. Well, because it's from Brennan's perspective, which is worse, an incompetent accident reconstructionist or prosecutorial misconduct, because at the end of the day, like, that's where he would have been left. By the time that we had gotten through all of the defense's witnesses, where it would have been time for Welcher to come up and testify, the x-ray situation had already been sorted out, right? Now we know, and we've seen the x-rays. Now we see the big role of the x-rays, right? So we absolutely know they exist. So what happens if Judson Welcher, has to explain, well, there were no x-rays that I saw. They just weren't there. Now, all of a sudden, it really starts to highlight that Brennan may have not given him the x-rays. And of course, Brennan probably in the end would have claimed, oh, it's just an accident, was a mistake, whatever. But clearly, that's not the kind of mistake that Hank Brennan would make. You do have to wonder, though, what is the intention there? Why would you do that in this case? If you're Hank Brennan, why would you withhold the x-rays from Judson Welcher, right? Why do you think he would do that? To make Welcher feel less guilty about manipulating the evidence that they don't have to try to make Karen Reed look guilty? I mean, I know that sounded crazy, what I just said, but I think that actually is the reason. I think the reason that Brennan does not give Welcher the x-ray is because from the beginning, Welcher makes the assumption that Karen Reed is guilty and that, like, the evidence is on their side, like that he's coming in to do the right thing, right? That is what I think Brennan wants Welcher to think. Even if their methods are going to be, garbage, bullshit, total nonsense. Right? So I think it's very possible that at the end of the day, Brennan withholds the x-ray so that in Welcher's mind, he believes that it's possible that Karen Reed is guilty. Well, see, I didn't even see an x-ray. Maybe there was broken bones. It's not guaranteed there wasn't broken bones. So I know, I mean, that sounds crazy, but you kind of get the sense from Brennan that that's the kind of guy he is, that he is manipulating at that level of manipulation constantly, right? And that's the way it feels, certainly. If he doesn't see them, he can't be questioned on them. If Welcher doesn't see them, he can't be questioned on them. If he doesn't see them, that's true, but he does give an opinion about them anyway, right? So ultimately, what he says is, we don't know. Maybe they were, right? We don't know because we didn't see them. So it's almost like by not ever showing them to him, it leaves the door open for the possibility that they weren't taken and that there was broken bones, as opposed to closing that door completely by allowing Welcher to see that they were definitively, there were no broken bones. Absolutely 100%, right? And just knowing how, knowing how doctors can be with each other, having seen that firsthand, it's easy to say that somebody else is incompetent. Well, maybe this ME is just incompetent, right? So I could see Welcher, especially because he's a pretty arrogant guy, making that rationalization in his head. Oh, they didn't take the proper x-rays. No, I know you are. Twigs, I got that. Yes, that you're saying that it's the motive. I totally get you. I got you 100%. Yeah, no, I know. And, the thing is, it's like, it's definitely a better position for the Commonwealth to not give him the x-ray. I mean, I think that's kind of, we all can see that, right? Because as I said, if Welcher never sees the x-ray, then he can make the inference that maybe there was a broken bone, because we don't know there wasn't. The problem is that everybody else knows that there wasn't. And then it just, it's like, does Brennan just not have the foresight? And then it makes me start to think, can you imagine being a fly on the wall in the meeting, the original meeting between Brennan and Morrissey? Right? What do you think Morrissey says to Brennan about this case when he first is sort of courting him to come on and go after Karen Read? Pull out all the stops. We'll go to any length. I can only imagine what the language looked like. But, in other words, Brennan knew that he had full support of the DA's office behind him, and that he probably had a lot of leeway to, play games like this, to play games like with the hoodie, because I don't know what you think, but I would say with 100% certainty that Hank Brennan knew that the holes in the hoodie were not placed there by, that night. He knew that they were the cuts that were placed by somebody who evaluated or examined, did the testing on the clothing of John O'Keefe, and did it anyway, because at that point in the trial, that was like the turning point, right? Where he was desperate. He was desperate. Any way that he could to try to win, and to just any kind of points that he could get at that moment with a juror, to plant a seed of doubt in what the defense was saying. And again, I think that was also a fatal mistake that Michael Morrissey made here. He ended up, if you look at Brennan's case, really, and particularly Welcher and Burgess, they were a great case for a situation where it's flipped. So if the situation was completely reversed, where in this case, I'm not even sure how you could make this true, but let's just say that in this case, the defense team was the prosecutor's office and Hank Brennan is the defense. They don't have to put on a case. All they have to do is just poke holes, right? They need to plant doubt in your mind. That's ultimately exactly what Welcher does, right? He says, like, well, the reason why I didn't use crash test dummies is because I know that they're not going to produce, the result I want. And then he uses the excuse that, well, there's just so many unknowns. There's too many unknowns. So the blue pain test, which is just, it's hard for me to imagine as a scientist being willing to put this into the world because of how ridiculous it seems. But the reason why he says he did it is because it was the only way that he could come up with to show that it might be possible. Not even likely, but it might be possible that you could get approximately a placement like that, which we then learned from Rentschler isn't true. But the point he's making is that maybe it's possible. And if that's the point, that's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It is an argument that a defense team could make. That's like a Donna Adelson argument. Could be, right? Maybe. Well, maybe. And so my point is, obviously, if you've been a defense attorney for, decades, and I don't know exactly how long, Brendan's been in the role that he's in now, but if you've been thinking like a defense attorney for that long, it seems to me like it probably wouldn't be so easy to just flip sides. Just in terms of your strategy, in terms of your approach, in terms of thinking about what your objectives are, right? That can't be just like an easy switch over. And I think that seems really obvious from the case that Brennan put in front of us. To me, it was not a beyond a reasonable doubt or even close, right? Not even close case. It was, maybe this is possible in some way case. Just absurd.
And then there were 70 other photographs at autopsy taken by a state trooper who was at the examination. I reviewed Mr. O'Keefe's medical records from Good Samaritan Medical Center and the EMS run sheet. I reviewed photographs.
And also, let me just say, the defense witnesses were so quality. I don't, how do you get past Dr. La Posada? I mean, she was just the smartest. Like, if you go back, how Trial Channel, right? If you go into Trial Channel in their videos, they will put the, the time markers in. Not always, but a lot of the time. And in her video, they put the time where she starts giving her credentials to when they move on to another topic. It's like a 45-minute window of just her listing her credentials, right? And remember, the judge was not going to allow her to testify, if you remember. And she was just so good and so obviously qualified. Like, no judge in the universe could really make a legitimate argument to keep Dr. La Posada off the stand. It's just, she was just so qualified.
Mr. O'Keefe's clothes that were taken at the crime lab.
Crazy.
I reviewed photographs of pieces of tail light, hard plastic, clear, black, red. I reviewed photographs of the outside.
So JMMMM, this is such a good point. This is exactly what I've been saying. And yeah, I don't get it. Like, there's only one reason. The answer really is it can only be one thing. But JM says, if they just let it die down, no one would be prosecuted. When they keep the prosecution of Karen Read alive, it just provides more opportunity to reveal more corruption. Absolutely. And to keep it in everybody's minds. That's exactly what I was saying earlier about when the McAlberts did their little media tour right after the verdict to try to say like, oh, we're the victims in all of this and we're being persecuted and people think that, we're murderers. And even if you're seen with us, you're a murderer. And it's like, well, yeah, well, because you are and they are, right? So, and yeah, you're right. That's exactly right. You just keep, but it's just amazing. It's like, they just can't do it. They can't do it. They cannot do it. I completely agree with you. Let this go, because all you're doing is inciting more anger, right? They should really let Aidan Carney go too. They really should let it go. I mean, wouldn't you just want this to go away? I mean, you make this unimaginable investment in using taxpayer dollars in a trial that you had no shot at winning. All it does is expose their corruption more and more. I mean, look at Michael Proctor. This isn't even hard to see. It's not even hard to see. I mean, it's right in all of our faces. When I start pulling out the evidence, it just seals the deal, right? It's not like people who aren't looking don't see it. Anybody sees it. All you have to do is think about a car, a thousands and thousands of pound car backing into somebody at 20 miles per hour and then look at the injuries and it's like, oh yeah, that didn't happen. So what else is going on here? Right. So you would think, let Turtle Boy go. Let's just move on. But this group, that's not what they do. They can't let it go. They just keep doubling down. It's unbelievable. And now what Cosgrove is actually doing, and he irks me, Cosgrove, like he in particular just irks me. Everything about him, he gives these like really like they're very like, it's beyond arrogance. It's just like this cocky confidence, these smug looks to the judge. And he's just, there's something very just off with him. You know, good old boys on steroids kind of a thing. Just something about this guy that he's not a good guy. Certainly not when it comes to this case. He's clearly out for blood. And now to make matters worse, they want to reel Karen Reed into this again. It's just such a bad decision. I am so with you on this. It is such a bad decision. But these are the people that are at the prosecutor's office. This is the group that they have there. That's how they roll. It's how they roll.
Side of Karen Reed's SUV.
It's
I
unimaginable.
reviewed the Canton Police Department incident report on the death. I reviewed 100 and some photographs taken by Canton Police of the outside of the house at 34 Fairview Road in Canton. I reviewed some photographs taken by the real estate agent who was going to sell the house at the inside.
Was there any evidence in the medical records that you reviewed of any indication whatsoever of a fracture in Mr. O'Keefe's hand?
No.
Was there any indication whatsoever in any of the medical records you reviewed that there was a fracture of any bone in the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe?
Not that I saw. Again, it wasn't x-rayed.
Was there any indication in the...
Wait, think about this. Think about what he's saying. Like, does Judson Welcher just not know where he is and like what day or time, or the fact that we've been through this already once? I mean, this guy looked at everything, like, how do you actually believe this? How do you believe this? The arm that at this point in time is like the most famous arm in the history of trials, right? Welcher's like, no, we don't know. Wasn't x-rayed. Wasn't x-rayed. It's just, oh, it's so unbelievable. So yes, Kit Gracie, dyslexic Angle says, I wonder if we have to get someone or the feds will have a reason to be able to actually charge them with something. Here's what worries me about this. Okay. So when you go back, and I watched the retirement party, it wasn't the personal party. It was like the, I don't know, government celebration retirement for the former Canton police chief. And at that party, all these different people get up and speak from all these different places. Like even like cops from New York City speak, and firefighters from, different counties, and the feds, like the local feds, speak also, because the two work together so closely. So what makes me very nervous here, I don't know, like I know that Josh Levy was the one who was in charge then, right? He stepped away when, the whole transition of power started, right? Like right before the last election. I think that's when Josh Levy stepped out, like maybe a year and a half before that, approximately. So I worry that they're kind of too close, that no feds are ever going to, be looking at this because they're in bed together. You know what I'm saying? That's what I worry about. Now, I don't know enough about who's in that position now or how it works. But, these counties, I don't know, Massachusetts, something is wrong. Something is just wrong. And listen, they already have evidence. I mean, they already have all the evidence. The feds already investigated this once, right? I mean, you got to wonder, will we ever see the results of that investigation? Will we ever really know what they found? I mean, if they have Brian Albert's cell phone records, I cannot imagine that they are not just utterly incriminating. I don't know if they do. But they would be incriminating for sure. 100%. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yes, he sure is. He is the ringleader. 100%. And he's not a good guy. And the other thing is, they're going to need somebody on the inside, right? Like they're going to need anybody who's going to ever bring charges against the McAlberts would need somebody from the inside to give them information. Now, there was rumors that during the investigation, Brian Higgins had signed a proffer, but I think it was only a partial proffer agreement. In other words, he had some level of immunity, but not full immunity. If that makes any sense. Yeah. So
the medical records and the autopsy that you say you reviewed of any fracture of any bone anywhere in the body of Mr. O'Keefe.
Yes.
Other than the
certainly, Audrey,
bone or the skull.
If there was ever anybody who embodies the essence of a witch in Massachusetts, certainly Jen McCabe fits the bill. Oh my God. That woman is just so creepy.
There's a couple
evil.
bones in the skull that are fractured, but other than the skull, no.
Correct. So, are you aware that
I hope so, Kismet.
medical examiner
I hope so.
for the state of Massachusetts, Dr. Sporty Bello, performed an autopsy on Mr. O'Keefe? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And you're aware of it because you read the autopsy report, correct?
Correct.
Are you inclined, and it's a question, that Dr. Sporty Bello missed a fracture or didn't look properly for a fracture on Mr. O'Keefe?
No. I'm simply indicating that, for example, a hairline fracture.
The answer was
I didn't
yes
see any
to that.
evidence that they actually x-rayed the structure, so there would be no overt evidence of that.
There were wounds on the right arm of Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Correct.
How long does it take to blink your eye?
250 milliseconds. It takes a quarter of a second to blink your eye. So this occurs if your hand's hit at 15 miles an hour by a car, it's going to be accelerated up to the speed of the car about 50 times faster than you can blink. So this is lab testing at 17 miles an hour. So the housing and the cover was basically propelled into the forearm of the dummy at 17 miles an hour.
What was the acceleration that was noted on the arm?
So when you look at the arm, its acceleration here is almost 300 Gs.
What does that mean to us?
So, 300 Gs, you say the weight of the arm is 10 pounds. 300 Gs means there's 3,000 pounds of force acting on that arm.
Is that enough to break a bone?
It's more than enough to break a bone.
Is that enough to fracture, to tear ligaments?
Absolutely, yes.
What about the bones in the hand? Are those stronger or the same resistance as the bones in the forearm? Or are they more delicate?
No, the bones in the hand are, as you can imagine, much weaker because they're much smaller. When you look at the carpal bones, the metacarpal bones, the metacarpal interphalangeal joint, which is basically your knuckles, they are much smaller and it takes much less force to fracture your hand bones compared to your ulna or your radius. No evidence of it whatsoever. So this is a 24 mile an hour impact with the arm of the dummy contacting the rear, again, tail light. And it shows you the motion, the dummy suspended, shows you the motion of the dummy, and again, the force and acceleration. Now, that right video I put in because that's real-time video. We've been showing the low speed, but look on the right. This is the actual speed at 24 miles an hour.
Look at that.
That's what it looks like if you have your hand out and it's struck by an SUV. It's all about weight, right? Because you have a 6,000-pound car and you have a 10-pound arm. It's whatever speed that car is going, your arm, your hand, whatever's sticking out there is immediately going to get accelerated up to the speed of that vehicle.
Can you imagine?
No, there were no forces from the testing, and it's simple physics. Your center of mass of your body
Simple
is
physics,
basically
if you know simple physics.
your umbilicus or your belly button. So in order to move the body, you have to apply a force at that part of the body. If your arm's struck, it's not going to move your body appreciably. All it's going to do, your arm's like a moment arm, it's going to spin you around. Could there be some motion forward or backward if you take a step? Possibly. But the center of mass of your body isn't going to move.
We have a pirouette, at least. We have a spinning. You did say that you'd spin around. So, Trooper Paul was like, kind of right.
You have to get struck by the vehicle to have the body actually move in a specific direction.
If you're talking about only an interaction between the arm and the back of the vehicle, no, there wouldn't be any projection. Again, if you
I love when he says that because you can see he's like, are you serious? Like you, right? He really does look like he's like trying not to laugh almost like, no, there would not be any projection.
think about this, the arm weighs about, again, with Mr. O'Keefe would be about 11 pounds. So you still have, another 200 plus pounds being held down by gravity, and the force is only acting on the arm. So essentially the arm would be accelerated, but the whole body, because the center of mass is not being struck, would not be projected.
So this is a slow-mo of the overhead from the real time. It was a GoPro that was recording that real-time video, and this is a slow motion of that video.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. As you see the vehicle contact the arm, what happens to the arm as it's being contacted in those milliseconds where it's being accelerated up to 24 miles an hour?
Well, the arm's accelerated up and pushed away from the body. So whatever part of your arm or body is contacting the car, that's going to be pushed forward away from the rest of your body. So not only is it loading...
You see how it goes away from the taillight here? Like, one of the reasons why I love this is because, the Commonwealth is saying, oh, it's approximately 24 miles per hour. She's gunning it. She's got the gas pedal, pinned at like 80%, whatever it is. But you see how the car is going so fast that by the time it hits the arm, right, it just pushes the arm out of the way and the taillight keeps going behind it because of the speed of the car. There's no taillight on the clothing, right? It's just unbelievable. It's just so unbelievable. It's just so stupid.
The arm with an impact force as it strikes the arm in the hand, but then it's actually stressing the joints too. It's really like ripping imagine having a car come and 3,000 pounds of force pulling your arm forward at the elbow, at the shoulder joint. It's putting a lot of force and pressure on that appendage. Now, if Mr. O'Keefe's holding a glass at the time of this impact, think about that. What happens is you're holding a glass. It exposes the knuckles. So if you're holding a glass and your arm's at a 90-degree angle and the car comes back and hits your hand, it's going to strike right on the knuckles.
Right.
The force is going to be applied right at that joint. And then
how obvious now, right? It's so obvious to him. He's like, oh, come on, guys. If you were holding a glass, what would have, they're so good. They are so good. They're just so good. They're so good in so many ways, right? Like they're good humans and you really get that from them. So that's like first. They're just smart guys, good guys. They're kind of like nerdy guys that love physics. That's the vibe that you get. Like these good, nice people, nerdy guys who just like love hanging crash test dummies and like making rocket torches and whatever, right? That's what they like doing. They love this stuff, clearly. They're salaried also. That was another just very significant difference just in terms of character and the kind of people that clearly they presented themselves as being. Just really good guys. Really, really good guys. And you are absolutely right. Raul Thomas, Bev tried so hard to keep Arca out. Boy, did she, right? And I'll tell you, it was very clear, that Hank sold her. He promised Bev that they had something on Arca. He came in, remember, guns blazing, the whole second, like, voir dire, or I guess it wasn't really the second. I think it was like the fifth at this point. But, the way that judge allowed Hank Brennan to treat Dan Wolfe, I thought that ended up really working to their advantage because it prepared both of them for being in front of the jury. So even though it was very painful to watch in real time, it just, it had to happen. The judge really had no way to keep them out because he grilled them so hard. And then they were 100% ready to testify in front of the jury. And I think this sort of speaks to what people were just saying in the chat. This is what the Commonwealth keeps doing to themselves. They just keep over and over, right? They just like double down, double down, double down, double down. But each time they make themselves look worse. And you would think at a certain point, it's like, are they ever going to stop? Is this ever going to stop? Are you going to keep doing this? I love this, John. One mob lawyer, 566,000. Two fake experts, 599,735. One DUI conviction, priceless. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's taxpayers. Man, doesn't that sum it up perfectly? Exactly. Yeah, man. Wow. It's so bad. It's so bad. And they're still doing it. The thing that kills me about Aidan Carney's case is the very people. I mean, think about being the judge here. The very people, he's a journalist that predates the trial. It's not like he started calling himself a journalist, a blogger, someone who was exposing corruption just when this starts, right? This is something that's been going on long before Karen Reed is a thing. Right. So it's not like they can say, oh, he's not, it's like if I just started calling myself a journalist, that would be different because that really isn't true. In this case, he is a journalist. That is his job. Number one. Number two, the very people he's talking about Brian Tully on his YouTube program, and Brian Tully is the one that shows up to arrest him. How is any of that okay? I mean, it's just, could you imagine being in jail for that? I mean, this is where my head starts to just explode because how is that okay in any world, anywhere? And by the way, how does that benefit anyone except for Brian Albert, right? That's who it benefits. The McAlberts. Everybody else, nope. Everybody else, not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
It's going
Scary
to
stuff.
likely hit along the forearm back near the elbow. In this one, there's actually contact. We moved it in so that you would get contact with the elbow and the upper arm as well. So it's in the position after Dr. Welcher moves his elbow in and rolls his shoulder into the taillight cover. We evaluated that position with this test.
And do you see any damage to the liftgate taillight based on this test?
There's extensive damage at this speed, yes.
What about the damage what damage would you expect to see to the arm itself?
Right. So, that's the other thing. Remember, the car doesn't have the kind of damage that these events would have caused also.
At this speed and in this orientation?
At this speed, I mean, we're talking 4,000 pounds of force on the forearm. And with the hand, 1,400 to probably 3,000 pounds. I mean, well above levels where you would get fractures.
Next slide, please. What are we looking at in this slide, these two photos?
This was the final test that was conducted in using a dummy, and it was impacted at 29 miles an hour. And this was a center of mass impact.
Why was it important, Dr. Winchler, why was it important to do a center of mass test?
If we have an auto pedestrian impact and you want to see where the pedestrian ends up, you have to evaluate how they were impacted by the car. In order to have the pedestrian move any substantial difference, it has to be hit at the center of mass. Again, it has to be hit at that belly button area to propel the body in a certain direction depending on the speed and direction. If there's no center of mass impact, how does someone get to the point of rest? You can't correlate a side swipe where the arm gets contacted and say if someone ends up 20 feet away, there's no way to correlate that arm impact caused them to somehow move 20 feet away. It wouldn't be as a result of the actual incident. It wouldn't be a result of the impact pushing their body in that direction. No, it's not reasonable. That's not physically possible. And you look at the arm itself, and we're looking at talking about the injuries and the abrasions compared to fractures. So if Mr. O'Keefe's arm was hit at 24, 29 miles an hour, what this suggests, and there were only abrasions, what this would suggest is that if the taillight doesn't cover or fracture, you can have your arm hit at 24 miles an hour and you wouldn't have any injuries at all, which from a biomechanical standpoint doesn't make sense. So here's the video showing that strike at 29 miles an hour with the center of mass impact to the dummy.
So just think about the Trooper Paul theory, right? That he pirouetted and flew. So even if the body was hit directly, there's no like movement horizontally 10 feet and it's just a straight shot back, right? It's just another way to say that would be there is no world that we live in where the laws of physics apply here in this space and time reality where John O'Keefe got his injuries from Karen Reed's Lexus. Maybe in the world that Hank Brennan imagines, maybe we could help him to, write a novel or something where, the clip can happen and actually result in the scene the way that we see it. But in the real world that we all live in, it's not possible. And this is where, anyone who really believes that, like John O'Keefe's family, believes that Karen Reed did this, you can see that in order to make that assessment, you just have to not look at the evidence. There's no other, you cannot be looking at this evidence and be rational and come to the conclusion that Karen Reed's Lexus made contact with John O'Keefe. So the only way to do it is to not look at the evidence, right? That's the only way.
It shows there was extensive damage to the rear of that Lexus. So if you had a center of mass hit, you would have damage to the liftgate, to the fender, to the sheet metal. You would have substantially more damage than what we had in this case.
And what are we seeing in these series of photos?
Another question I guess I would have for some of you, maybe you know this, maybe you don't. I certainly have no idea. If you can the feds, so in order to investigate, let's say the investigation of John O'Keefe, right? Can somebody from an outside jurisdiction do that investigation? Does it have to be somebody from the same jurisdiction? Does it have to be somebody in the FBI in Massachusetts? Does it have to be the Department of Justice who work in that state? Could it be someone somewhere else? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. But I'm just trying to think of all the different ways that somebody would be compelled to investigate this case where there is a police officer who was murdered and there is such clear corruption. I mean, it's just such a clear-cut case of corruption. It's unbelievable. And just to remind you the level and degree of it's the perfect mix of ineptitude and corruption too. The level of incompetency is so high that they kept, Brian Tully and Michael Morrissey honestly kept Michael Proctor on as the lead investigator into the death of John O'Keefe through the first trial. Okay. They kept him on the whole way. He was still the guy in charge while he was testifying. And the only reason he was fired, make no mistake, was because of the new guy that came in and did the firing. It wasn't because of Michael Morrissey. Certainly, had nothing to do with Morrissey's office. Nothing at all. They would never have fired Michael Proctor. In fact, they would have loved to throw it in all of our faces to have Proctor up there proudly displaying his uniform.
So this is obviously during the collision sequence. The body now has loaded into the liftgate and the back window. What you're seeing here is the back window shattering. And this is just a few split second later in time. Where,
I don't know.
Again, the body is continuing to move with the vehicle as it's contacted.
Next slide.
Honey, what are you doing?
And what is this?
This depicts the post-impact damage to the rear of the Lexus. As I noted, the rear window is completely shattered. There's deformation and crush to the liftgate section of the vehicle. The bumper step was popped out, and then there was some minor fracturing in the bumper cover at the lower level.
Did you note anything regarding the internal components of the exemplar taillight, even at this direct impact?
So the taillight, as you can see, it blew out the outer lens cover. I believe the part of the clear diffusers were actually still in place. I think the lower one might have been fractured here, but I think the upper one was still in place.
At 29 miles an hour with a direct impact, did the exemplar taillight exhibit the same type of damage to the diffuser as the subject taillight?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
More or less damage in this photo to the diffuser specifically than in the subject taillight?
Well, I think there was more in the subject taillight. As I mentioned, I believe the top diffuser
more
on this
damage?
Correct.
Okay, that was my question. And is there another slide at the on the back end of this one?
That's it.
Okay. We can have the lights. Dr. Wolf, you
Liz
conducted
says
tests
the FBI can travel anywhere domestically. Also, I don't think they stopped investigating. I think that the FBI will have more to say, just like Donna Adelson case. Maybe. My God, it's a wonderfully optimistic view. And I hope so. I mean, look, the truth is too, they could have sort of stumbled upon this case inadvertently by investigating something else. Right. So that's another possibility where, this became like another arm of a bigger investigation into corruption. Listen, I almost guarantee, like if I'm at the feds and I want to try to look into corruption somewhere, boy, Boston seems like the greatest opportunity. I mean, pick any place in and around Boston, Massachusetts, like on a map, like the globe, just like put your finger on it and let's try there. Guaranteed there's corruption. I mean, it's like a no-brainer. It just is. It's just so sad. It's like, why is it like this? I mean, why was Michael Proctor ever a police officer? And that's just an example that came to mind, but and then you start thinking about, like the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case in that context, and the sky's the limit how bad it could really be. I mean, would be very interesting if we had, I don't think we'll ever see this, but if a Kelly Dever was willing to tell all, right? Like if somebody like that in that position, or Kelsey Fitzsimmons was willing to tell about her experience working. And I forget which police department. Does anybody remember which police department Kelsey Fitzsimmons is at? It's definitely the local police. And I don't remember which department she was with. But yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear an insider's take, but you're really up against it. I mean, you got to be willing to go up against all of these people. And we've seen what they do. You see the way that, I mean, Turtle Boy stuck his neck out, went up against them, and Brian Tully was at the bus stop waiting for him with handcuffs. So that's what happens. What's the lesson there? That's what happens when you use your voice to go after them. If they have the jurisdiction to go after you, they will. They'll try to stop you. They're going to try to shut you up, right? Thank you, Charlie Lynn. Thank you. North Andover. Yeah. Is it Andover or Andover? Is it Andover? I think it is Andover. And that is, I got to look at the map. North Andover, that's like Methuen. Is that? I think that's where it is. For those of you that are familiar with the Massachusetts sort of landscape, just a little bit more north from where Norfolk County is. Massachusetts, that area, that part of Massachusetts, it's not such a big state up and down the coast. It's, not that big. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that you guys are right. I hope they do. I hope there is going to be an investigation.
And secondly, which I believe is just as important, it shows the post-impact trajectory of the dummy. So again, if you're struck on the corner by the Lexus, the dummy goes straight back in line with the vehicle. There's no force and no direction to actually cause that dummy to move off into the side of the vehicle.
So that was interesting, by the way. I don't know if you caught that, but that was, okay, so even if you are hit like by the side, there's no force that's going to shoot you off, however this has happened here. That wasn't happening in any world, being hit by the car. Not happening. Didn't happen.
So you can't be hit center of mass with a vehicle going straight back and somehow end up 10 or 20 feet to the side of where the vehicle is traveling.
So in this circumstance, would you expect the taillight material to be distributed straight back in the same center line as the vehicle is traveling?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you also expect the body to be struck and move in the same center line as the vehicle?
The body's going to move in the direction that the vehicle is moving. That main direction, that main force moving straight back, the body is going to move primarily straight back. My opinion that it is not consistent with contacting and fracturing the taillight cover.
Do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
I do, yes, sir.
So this is me. I'm actually 6 feet, half an inch tall.
This is me.
What you see in the upper right is the coroner's examination report for Mr. O'Keefe. He's 73 inches tall. That's 6 feet, 1 inches tall.
Getting there.
At this time, I was 220 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, at the time of this incident, was 216 pounds. So I took measurements of myself. I'm actually wearing the same make and size shoes.
You remember the
What a
first time you saw
coincidence.
this?
As
I
Mr.
almost
O'Keefe.
died. I swear to God, I almost died the first time I couldn't believe it. I had some sense that this is what was coming because there was something in Bob Alessi's, and I love him too. He's one of my favorites for sure. I loved listening to him, ask questions and just his style. I loved, but yes, it was very clear from some kind of motion, something that he was talking about. He was talking about Welcher's 90+ page PowerPoints. And the way that he talked about it made me think that they couldn't make sense of it. They didn't understand what he was trying to put forth. It just made me think that, oh, this isn't anything to be worried about. That was the vibe that I think I'd gotten from Alessi. So by the time Welcher testifies, I was curious but not worried. And obviously ARC is a big threshold to try to surpass. But when I saw this, I mean, did anybody expect the blue paint dressed like John O'Keefe? Like in your worst imagination, was there any world where this is what you imagined? Any world. Oh, wait, what is this? Hold on. It says, oh, no, that's not it. Wait, hold on. It said KT says he billed 1 hour for searching each item of clothing, then more time to order each item. Yeah, I mean, it's almost, like I said, it almost looks like extortion by the end. It really does. Yeah, I mean, what are they doing? And what are they doing watching the testimony of Tristan Morris? What are they doing watching the testimony of Brian Albert Jr.? What is an accident reconstructionist company going to extrapolate from any of those witnesses and their testimony that could possibly be useful in their ability to reconstruct whatever happened here? Right? It just doesn't make any sense. It really just doesn't. Karen's getting her Lexus. Good question. Did he ever sell? Oh, I thought you said, did she ever sell? Good, probably. I'm sure he got rid of the Lexus right away, right? I'm sure he did. And look, Aperture wanted to maintain its relationship with the Commonwealth. I mean, they were having big dinners in Boston with other prosecutors' office all over the area while this trial was happening, right? While this trial was going on, Aperture, the company, the larger company, right? Because it's a national quote unquote company, was whining and dining with other DA's offices. Kind of reminds you of like an Ian Whiffen situation, but like on a bigger scale. It's just, there's something very corrupt, I don't know. It's not good. These prosecutors' offices, they just have total power and authority. It's very, very scary. Pissed me off too, KT. Pissed me off too. I was pissed. I was so pissed. I was relieved because it was absurd, but I was pissed. Like, are you serious right now?
The same brand of jeans as Mr. O'Keefe.
Because that's an important detail, to be wearing the same brand of jeans as Mr. O'Keefe somehow is going to help you, sir,
really
figure out how he was hit by a car. Awesome.
The same brand and size.
Yeah. What are you doing wearing? What is he doing wearing, John? Somebody explain that to me. Why are you wearing? Are you going to vomit on yourself too? I mean, what is What is the value of
So
that?
you can see in
exercise?
my right hand here, I have a glass.
But what these tests show is that the force produced on the hand, as represented by the PowerPoint from Aperture, even at 15 miles an hour and likely below that, you would expect to get fracture of the hand bones, of the knuckles, metacarpal interphalangeal joints, and the metacarpal bones if you contacted the rear of that vehicle at that speed.
Did you see any indication in the x-rays you saw or the medical records that you reviewed that Mr. O'Keefe's hand was damaged in such a way that you would expect?
There were no indications whatsoever of that, no, sir. So even at 10 miles an hour, you're going to have 600 to 1,200 pounds of force acting on the arm.
Is that enough to break it?
That's enough. If you strike the elbow, that's more than enough to actually fracture the different bones of the elbow.
If an arm was hit at that speed with those forces, would you expect the x-rays to show no trauma, no broken bones, no fractures, no hairline fractures?
I would not expect that, no, sir. It takes, just to have a transverse blow right against the bone, it takes about 1,100 to 1,200 pounds of force to cause a fracture. We're at that level already at a 10-mile-an-hour impact.
What about a 24-mile-an-hour
At 10
impact?
miles per hour.
We're at 1,400 to 2,800 pounds of force.
Did you see any trauma on John O'Keefe's arm that was suggestive of an impact of that nature, of that size, of that force?
There was no trauma. There were no fractures. There wasn't even an indication on the arm of where it would have contacted
Wasn't
the
a
vehicle.
bruise.
So if there's fracture at the taillight, there's going to be a force at that point on the arm where it actually contacts the taillight and causes that, right? There's going to be a force riser to cause that,
Bruise.
that damage. There was no bruising. There was no lacerations. There was nothing at the alleged point of contact which would indicate an impact that produces thousands of pounds of force on the arm.
Here's a glass. It looks similar. It's from the same location.
I'm trying to get to this, my favorite moment in the Aperture stellosphere.
If you use the right crash test dummy, and then to set up the test, because generally you only get 1 or 2 shots at it, because you damage the car, you have to know everything about the parameters. And so, again, pedestrian impacts are so very sensitive to initial angles. If I were to do a test and it was off a tiny, tiny bit, and we got some different results, I would be in here having to defend it. Well, your own testing didn't show it. Point is we don't have enough information to be able to conduct that testing.
So this is really interesting, actually. I was so distracted by the fact that, he was saying we don't have enough information, which is basically, he might as well be testifying for the defense. But it's interesting. He's also lying in a way, right? Because the whole point that ARCA is making throughout their entire testimony is when you are dealing with these kinds of force calculations, when you are dealing with a 6,000-pound vehicle traveling at 10, 15, 20, 25 miles per hour, the whole point is it's not a game of inches. Right? That's their entire point. It's not a game of inches. Doesn't matter if you get hit on this part of the hand or that part of the hand or this part of the arm or that part of the arm. It's not sensitive to the angles the way that Judson Welcher is saying here. It's exactly the opposite. And I never really thought about that until right now, just because it's so obvious. But this is just an outright lie, right? I mean, he's just totally full of shit. And, if you're just hearing it back to back, it's very obvious that, Welcher's just lying straight up. Yeah, this isn't true. And look, what did they pay for? What did the taxpayers of Massachusetts pay for? They paid for him to be an obstructionist. That's what they got. They paid for him to produce doubt. Again, unfortunately for Brennan, that's not his job in this case, right? But he was just to be difficult. And he did that well. I mean, look, if I were going to give him credit where it's due, he definitely, threw Bob off of his game a little bit. He definitely found any opportunity to be difficult when he could be difficult. And I think that was his job. At the end, that's what
Did you conduct that test?
And because here's the thing. If these guys really did do what they say they did, which I doubt, but if they did look at all of the evidence the way that they have listed in their invoices, these guys would have known the Karen Reed case better than anybody else in the courtroom, right? I mean, Judson Welcher would have known everybody and everything and known this case backwards, forwards, sideways, in and out. Do you get the sense that he did? Do you get that from him, that he knows this case backwards and forwards and in and out? Not particularly.
In an attempt to show that the injury patterns on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm are consistent with being struck by the Lexus taillight on that arm.
So generally, I wanted to show that the location, area, and span over which that headlight covers matches the location and area of the lacerations on his arm.
So in this slide, the picture on the far left is,
this is what I wanted
the
to get
photographs
to.
provided from the autopsy in hospital with Mr. O'Keefe's right arm fully extended. Again, those are the only photographs we have.
What about the photograph in the middle and to the far right?
In the middle and the far right, what I did was actually take that arm and then rotate the forearm to put it in a position that it would be in, as demonstrated by the paint test, with the arm at approximately 90 degrees. Well, if you look at the paint test and the way the arm's at 90 degrees and having the car come and essentially contact and push the arm out of the way, that's going to give you or tell you the directionality or the direction of the abrasions. Because if you have your arm at a right angle and the vehicle comes and pushes and slides against it on that forearm, you would expect those abrasions to be horizontal, to be in line with that forearm.
Wow.
They're not. You can see some of them are vertical, some of them are angled, some of them it's hard to tell what the directionality is with the type of kinematics or the type of motion shown in the paint test. Again, of the arm getting pushed out of the way and the car traveling past if there were going to be abrasions from the fractured glass as it moves along.
Do you have to be a physicist or an accident reconstructionist to see that there's no way? Just look at the clarity of the fact that these markings are all going in different directions, right? That is very clear just by eyeing the way his arm looks. So now, based on what Aperture's trying to say, well, it's this area, and this area could have been hit by the taillight because it's kind of like in the same general vicinity. You start to look more closely, and it's like, no, because of the way that these markings, there's no way whatever made these marks would have been operating at this direction if it had come from the taillight, right? It's not possible. Just another example of how it couldn't happen. But there's more.
Again, it would be lengthwise parallel to the forearm. I slowed this video down, and so as you can see, as it starts out, and you'll see the vehicle starts to slowly back. So there was no photographs showing the position of the arm in the back of the car. The video is from the side, and the top video, you can't tell where the arm is positioned against the tailgate. But whatever positions it's at, you can see as the car backs up here, look at the elbow and the upper arm. If the car backed directly in this direction, there would be no contact with that elbow or the upper arm. And remember, this test is to show where the paint would transfer and if that correlates to the lacerations.
You mean, before you start the video, when you say there would be no contact with the elbow or the upper arm, you mean the biceps area and from the elbow up?
That's correct.
Is that based on the photograph on the right and the positioning of the surrogate?
Exactly. You can see right now, if the car just backed directly straight back, it would not contact the elbow or the upper arm. Exactly. You can see right now, if the car just backed directly straight back, it would not contact the elbow or the upper arm.
What did you note as the car, just before the car starts to make contact with the surrogate? What did you note?
So in order to get that pattern on the arm, right as the car contacts the arm, the surrogate pushes his elbow forward, leans into the car against the light, and then rolls off.
Can you play that for us, please?
How crazy is that?
Did you see what you were describing in that video?
I did, and I can slow it down. So you can see, even at this point, as the car approaches, it would not contact the elbow or the biceps. So as it comes in, watch the elbow all of a sudden shoot in. Surrogate turns his arm in and then leans against the light cover. So this is not indicative of someone standing there and having a car back into their arm.
So this was pretty eye-opening. I think this moment, when I saw this for the first time, I was a little shocked. I don't really know why. It shouldn't be surprising. They are what they are. This is what you get for $700,000, apparently. So, makes sense, I suppose. If you're going to give me $750,000, sure, I'll say whatever you want me to say. But when ARCA was able to present this so clearly and how dishonest it is, what else is there to say? This accident just didn't happen. Fundamentally, right? So, which brings us back to our original discussion. which is if the accident, sorry, my dog is getting antsy and driving me a little crazy right now. If there's no accident in front of 34 Fairview Road, then how does the taillight get in front of 34 Fairview Road? And I mean, this is what happens when you have a group of cops that take it upon themselves to try to plant evidence, right? What is the recourse for that? They just get away with it because no one's going to come after them to point it out. I mean, that's what happened here. There's no question. There's no other option. This is the only possibility that it could be, right? Because we've all seen, and look, the defense did what they needed to do to get the jury to, right? Essentially, it didn't happen. But beyond a reasonable doubt, right? That was their job. Their job was, okay, no way the prosecutors have met this burden. We've done our job. So they didn't even have to prove there wasn't an accident. They did do that because ARCA is that good. And their witnesses, Dr. La Posada, Dr. Russell, I mean, their witnesses were great. Even DeSogra, even if you didn't understand what he was saying, in the end, he just was presented so much better than everybody else for the prosecutor's office that he just seemed like a good guy. Okay, well, that's better than they were doing. So, okay, they weren't even trying. The defense wasn't even shooting for proof. They were just shooting to knock down the prosecutor's office. Imagine if you were shooting to prove that these guys planted evidence. They planted evidence. So, what do you do about that? Right? I mean, we saw what they tried to do to Aidan Carney, who started talking about it. Aidan Carney goes out and he starts yelling about this. Hello, these people murdered a police officer and all of you are going after the wrong person and duh. And so what happens? Oh, Michael Morrissey sends his lead chief henchman, Brian Tully, to the bus stop where his kids get on the bus to go to school, and they put him in jail. Right? So what do you do? What do you do in this case? I don't know, but I've had enough of them. I've had enough of these guys, man. I mean, look, there's layers here. There is the DA and the cops from the Massachusetts State Police that work inside that office. Sometimes the devil we know, at least we know what we're dealing with. I wonder who the hell is in there now that they've moved all of the, all the cops that we know, the names we know from that office. Can you imagine who might be in there now? I mean, any number of possibilities. Could be anything. Could be anyone. Who knows, right? I'm sure if they're working in that office, birds of a feather, right? So that doesn't make me feel very good either, right? Not feeling very warm and fuzzy about the cops that are in there now, even though, it's not Michael Proctor and, Yuri Buchanan. Am I sold that Brian Tully actually left the office? No. My guess is he's still in there because wherever he was being transferred to was very vague, very sketch, and he continued to stay on these cases. And do you have any doubt if he's still working on the Aidan Carney case right now? So he's probably still in Mike Morrissey's office as his lead henchman. So it's just, so you've got that group who planted evidence, and it's just matter of they planted taillight evidence, period, full stop. That's what happened. So that's that. But then you have the people in the house, right? You have Brian Higgins, who has done the smarter thing here, right? Separated himself from Brian Albert. Probably the right call, right? Brian Albert doesn't seem like a guy I'd want to tether myself to for any length of time. And you've got these people, still out in the world trying to spin that somehow they're innocent victims in all of this. And the big bad people on social media are making their life so hard. Well, you murdered a cop. So, that sucks, but you know, you are killed. You did murder a cop. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but that's what happened. So, you know, it's hard to let that go. It's hard to just let it go. I'll tell you, it's hard to let it go. It is. It is. So, oh, and this is the last thing I wanted to make sure I said tonight. So, I am announcing that our live call-in show will be Sunday, September 28th at 7 p.m. Now, I'm pretty sure I know what the platform is going to be, but I'm working through some of the little details. So I'm going to put a link probably in the next few days into a comment. You guys will all be able to see it, and it'll give you exact instructions. If you want to, it'll be easy to listen, but really, if you want to join and be a part of the conversation, here's what I would say. When I did this the first time, I was blown away by how much faster we get new information, because when we all come together, when all of us that have spent all this time digging into the details of a case like this case, when we get on the phone and you can hear each other, information is transferred so much more quickly than via computer that it's like the exchange of ideas is like lightning fast. And so it's really interesting, and I encourage everybody here to participate, or at least to try to participate, to get on a call. There's no video. It'll be call only. Of course, you can listen. You don't have to participate, but I would encourage everybody to definitely consider it. And if you want to participate, all I ask is that you email me with your information. So as soon as we get off tonight and then tomorrow morning, I'm going to put in the comment exactly how to email me and exactly what format to use to kind of flag my attention. It'll just be put in the subject line, all caps, call-in show. And then you're just going to give me the name that you want me to use, the topic, what you want to talk about. Pretty much that's it. There's a few other little things too that I need for this new platform, but it's pretty simple and straightforward. So I can't stress enough how awesome it is to participate in the dialogue. And, you know, like I said, I really believe, you guys, that if we put our heads together, you know, we'll get there much more quickly. And in terms of figuring out what actually happened in the case here, in what actually happened to John O'Keefe specifically, I have no doubt that that call-in format expedites the transfer of knowledge, and it does so really effectively. The last time I did this, I learned a lot. And even when I just speak to my sister about it, because again, think about it. How many people in your life do you have that you get to have, you know, engaging dialogue back and forth? If you're lucky and you have a sister or friend who likes true crime or happens to be into what you are, that's awesome. But many of us don't, or at least, you know, we don't have all the time in the world to be talking to people about it all the time. So when you do, it's pretty interesting how quickly we exchange ideas. So I cannot encourage you enough to participate. It's going to be a lot of fun. And be on the lookout also. So probably also in the next few days, I'm going to put up some polls. I want to get your feedback about which direction to consider moving in next. So I definitely want to hear back from you. And as always, you guys, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. Everybody, you're awesome. You're the best chat in the whole world. Denise, you're the best moderator in the whole world. But really, you are. And really, it is the best chat. And maybe everybody says that, but really, we do really kind of have the best chat. Everybody's just so nice, kind, awesome, warm. And in this world that we're in right now, let's be fair, let's be honest, we kind of need it, right? It's just nice to have people that you just feel comfortable engaging with in a community around you that you look forward to spending time interacting with. So everybody, thank you for being here. You're amazing. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Everybody push the like button if you haven't already, which I'm so bad about remembering to say. And have a beautiful night. I will see you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Good night, everybody. Good night. Good night. Good night, everybody.